And a good Tuesday morning to the city of Indianapolis and everyone tuning in to the Fan Morning Show. I'm Kevin Bowen, back for another day, and he'll be with us again tomorrow. Jimmy Cook at the J Cook, Dan Dockich's producer in studio with us. We'll have Mike Wells on at 8:30, Gregg Doyel at 9 o'clock. And as always, a lot to get to. Phone lines will be open for those that we couldn't get to yesterday. Feel free to give us a call again, 317-239-1070 and at KBowen 1070 on Twitter. The sun is about to rise, and with that, there's another Colts offensive lineman that's hurt. So we'll certainly hit on that. That was probably the biggest Colts news item from yesterday. I assume you beat me in fantasy, Jimmy?
I did.
Okay. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. I knew you were probably on pins and needles waiting to say that, so congrats. Was Lamar Jackson close to 36 points?
Not really, no. I think he got 20. Well, I think he got 20. So 13 off. That's not what I was going to say, though. What I was going to say is breaking news, KB. Frank Reich has seen the film, and the pass blocking wasn't up to their standards.
Right,
so,
yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I'm glad he cleared that up. I was really wondering what he'd have to say on that. And not up to our standard was his quote yesterday about the offensive line and the protection. We'll hit on that a little bit later because I do think it's actually a point that needs a little bit more picking apart there. Monday night, last night, I would say Twitter, especially here in the Indianapolis market, boy, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, they're going to have my attention. 9 other Monday night games this year.
They were great.
That was fun.
It was from whether you study the game in-depthly or whether you're just a casual football fan, the way that just through a normal conversation, Peyton and Eli can break things down and simplify the game and still have the complexities of it from playing the most important position on the field was just enjoyable to watch. The guests they had were great. Travis Kelce cursed. And
it was on air.
A producer's live mic was telling them early in the first quarter to break. What else happened?
The fire
alarm went off. That was it. Yeah, the fire alarm went off.
I'm like looking around my house like, do I have a fire alarm that sounds like that? I was so confused when that happened. And I love the fact that they just kept on going there through the rest of the first half. I mean, yeah, you had your, a couple of your hiccups. There are a few times where it's like, hey, it's probably time to hit a break, and all of a sudden Ray Lewis just gets cut off mid-sentence and things like that. One definite thing that needs to be corrected, in my opinion, the game needs to be on at all times. Like, you need to have the screen on the game at all times. And you can still have Peyton and Eli in these small little boxes, around the perimeter of the screen. But I felt like there were a couple of times where it's like we just flat out missed a play. And to me, that can't happen.
Yeah, the plays can't happen. I'm fine with after the play has occurred. If you want to go full screen with them for a second, maybe when they're going to the huddle, that's fine. But whoever's the lead producer has to make sure you're not missing an actual play in game.
Especially when you don't have the lead announcer.
Right.
Like, to me, you don't have the Matt Taylor, the Gregg Rakestraw, whoever. So our visual has got to be there. And as much as I absolutely love Peyton and Eli going back and forth, to me, that is something that's key as well. I also felt like, and early on, I mean, my sense of humor died laughing at a back knee joke that Eli made to Peyton, very early on in the telecast. Peyton, we've grown used to him being so good when he's scripted. Saturday Night Live, whatever else, various commercials throughout the year. If anyone has heard him talk at a function, Peyton kind of has the handful, half dozen stories that he always comes back to. That Harbaugh, Greg Roman story I'd actually heard before. That's one of his kind of patented ones that he told last night. But I felt like Eli's presence, while Eli didn't talk as much as Peyton, anywhere near as close to Peyton, I feel like just the presence of Eli as his little brother, it helps Peyton be a little bit more unfiltered. And I thought that was the most unfiltered Peyton we've seen. And just like watching his body language, I mean, at times he looked at Derek Carr like we looked at the Colts offensive line from Sunday. Like, that was a very different side of Peyton. The raw emotion, reading his body language, that is what I really, really love.
Oh, he was genuinely hyped when what was thought to be the game winner last night. I'll be honest, I'm repping like 4 or 5 hours of sleep because I stayed up for that whole game because I got locked into it.
Boy.
But when his live reaction...
I didn't make it past the third quarter.
No, I almost fell off, and then Oakland started creeping back in, and like I said, Peyton and Eli's commentary was enjoyable, so I stuck with it. But when the Raiders scored what they thought was the game winner before Carter ended up throwing the pick, they obviously ended up winning later in overtime. But Peyton, he had the arms up, like he was hyped, like it was one of his teammates. Like he was so invested in the game. And then to your point about the brotherly back and forth, like at one point they were showing like the shirtless Raider fans, and like Peyton was like, Eli, you're really enjoying the shirtless fans over there. We need to focus more on the game here, but it was great.
I just feel like that brother sense of humor. There's been a few times where my brother-in-law and my brother have both filled in when I've done my podcast, and there's just like a different. They might not be the diehard Colts fan with all this knowledge, but you just have kind of a calming presence. Your guard is down a little bit more. And hell, I don't think one time Peyton looked at his notes all game. I mean, you could tell he studied these players. If you want to nitpick a little bit, one of my buddies kind of texted me and I think he would admit he's not like a crazy diehard NFL fan, knows every 32 teams like the back of his hand. When Peyton's just using last names with all these players, it's a little bit difficult to follow there. But I also think from a casual fan standpoint, you do get a sense of humor with both of them that you can, listen to and don't feel like, I need to turn to Levy, Greasy, and Louis Riddick to get a little bit more of a general insight on both of these teams.
They did not know, which I didn't know, but to your point on that, Zay Jones caught the game winner, and he was number 7, and he was like he must have been the 4th or 5th guy on their depth chart receiver wise. And Peyton was like, Eli, tell us a little bit more on Jones. And Eli was like, yeah, Peyton, he's number 7, and it wasn't Zay, by the way. It was just Jones because they didn't know the first name. I now know the first name, so I looked it up. Like, yeah, he's number 7, and he just caught a game winner.
Like early in the game, Denzel Good got hurt, former Colts offensive lineman, and Peyton's just like, you hate to see anybody get hurt. Like it was just like the generic injury line. And again, some fans might not care at all about that. Some might say, hey, I'm there to watch Peyton and Eli go back and forth. I thought they went to the whiteboard, and I didn't love the whole Peyton acting like he was Gruden, Eli acting like he was Carr. To me, personally, just watch the game and tell me what's going on. Like, I don't necessarily, maybe when it's special teams are happening and you're punting, you can send Peyton to the whiteboard. You're coming back from a commercial break, you can do that as well. But I'm usually not one that's like, Peyton eats a banana and I'll stop what I'm doing and immediately go and watch it. But I'm certainly going to watch every single Peyton Eli telecast the entire year. And again, it's only 10 games.
Right. So we got 9 left.
And I'm hoping Colts Ravens in a month is one of those 10.
I'm pretty sure it's next Monday is their next time up because they said we'll see. Assuming it's Seattle next week, which I don't know for certain, but I thought that's what
is
it
it
said.
Seattle, Tennessee next week? Mark, will you
I could be making that up.
Look that up, who the Monday night game is?
Packers Lions.
Okay, you said Packers. Okay. My bad. So I'm pretty sure they're doing that game as well.
Well, Travis Kelce didn't even know who they were playing.
No, he did not, which was hilarious. Like, just we're playing the Chargers next week, and then like, well, Travis, actually, it's
Peyton's
the Ravens on Sunday.
Sure about that?
Get on the right flight there, Travis. But when they used the clicker, I really enjoyed that. Like, it felt like they did it a couple times in overtime, too. Felt like watching a film session, almost like a live version of Detailed, if you ever watched that ESPN Plus show where Peyton will break down, like, game film directly. Yeah. It kind of had similarities to that. Additionally, I just felt like, particularly when Russell Wilson was on, like, I'm sorry, Colts fans, but, like, there was that jab of, like, Colts being a major part of Peyton's life.
How was Wilson?
He was funny.
Yeah.
He was really good. He gave a St. Elmo's shout out.
Oh, wow.
He said he went to St. Elmo's on Saturday night, so maybe that was why he got it done on Sunday.
Do you think I felt like instead of 4 guests, just 2?
Yeah.
Like having, and I get that you fall into the trap of what if the game's a blowout and, do you need somebody to kind of cover some of the dead air? But it's like, and trust me, a quartet of guests of Barkley, Ray Lewis, Travis Kelce, and Russell Wilson. That's a pretty good.
I mean, Barkley off the
pretty
bat.
Good foursome. Yeah. Barkley really, really good.
I was shocked, but I was really surprised. Like, wow, okay, so we're bringing out Charles to start, and then all right, Ray Lewis.
But it's like next week we're getting Packers Lions. Okay, I mean, like, who are the Packers and Lions fans that equate to Barkley? To me, I would watch it just as much if it's just Peyton and Eli one guest. Bring on a guest with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter, and then if that's Ray Lewis, who I really enjoyed Ray, and I say Ray like I know him, Ray and Peyton going back and forth.
Mr. Lewis, KB.
Yeah, definitely it is. Yeah, Mr. Lewis. Yeah, certainly. More ways than one. With about 3 minutes to go in the first quarter, insert your guest here. Let that guest play out to whatever, the midway point of the second quarter. And then, because I think end of half stuff, that is great. Big time coaching decisions, big time quarterback decisions. I want to hear Peyton and Eli go back and forth on all of that.
I'm torn because while I enjoyed the stories from Ray Lewis, and I love Charles, my favorite inside the NBA person is Shaq. I mean, I love the whole crew, but Charles is a close second. So anytime he's on anything and you pair him up with Peyton, I'm going to be intrigued by it. However, I was surprised they ended up having, 2 active NFL players that are in their bye week, take a time. I mean, 2 well-known faces.
I was going to say 2 of the top 15 players in the
league. I'm fine with that. If you're going to force 4 guests at me, as long as half of them are current, top-tier NFL guys and just talking about, the previous week, but also talking about the matchups here and getting different perspective from guys that are still playing too, I was all for it.
Ben says Eli's crack on Peyton having a giant head was great. Oh, wow, the helmet's too small. Couldn't find a double XL, huh? He had some comment to Ray Lewis as what do you think could fit in there more, $10,000 or just a bunch of quarters in the helmet? And I laughed. I mean, there were several times that I laughed very hard.
Yep.
Just their brother humor back and forth. Peyton saying at one point he had better timing with Ed Reed than he had with Reggie Wayne. I laughed pretty hard at that. And just side note, and by the way, what a great game. The Raiders came back and won for those that missed it. ESPN always has those crazy stats where they had won 89 straight games, the Ravens, when they led by 14
Yep.
points. And to be fair, they led by 14 very early in that game. First off, watching Lamar Jackson is incredible, playing the quarterback position. And then having Peyton and Eli comment on Lamar Jackson playing the quarterback position was equally as funny. On Jackson's touchdown to, who was that in the back of the end zone? Marquise Brown or?
I think.
Okay, somebody like that. Peyton saying, I would have thrown it away 3 times on that play was just, that had me dying as well. So just their general reactions, raw reactions to various plays, off the cuff. What I love the most, Jimmy, is yes, you had some Peyton scripted action. You had some Peyton knowing full well that hey, John Harbaugh's told me this during the week and I'm going to comment on this. But then the fact that you got him reacting to live football, just watching his body language was enough for me. And his disgust at certain things, his happiness at other things. That's just insight that we're never going to get, and we don't get from, one of arguably the greatest football mind ever to play the game.
I feel bad for Steve Levy. And I said stuff to you off air, and I still kind of feel the same way. Here's my issue with Monday Night Football. There has not been, since Mike Tirico, and the standard was set for Mike Tirico by Al Michaels. So you have 2 top-tier, top-shelf broadcasters in Tirico and Michaels as the voice of Monday Night Football since I've been alive. And you followed it up with Sean McDonough and Joe Tessitore and now Steve Levy. And all those broadcasters are fine. They're good broadcasters. They're hardworking. They're true to their craft. They're fine. But Monday Night Football is not supposed to be a job for fine. It's supposed to be top level in my mind. And I don't know how ESPN, because they're clearly scrambling year over year, making adjustments. But this to me is the most bold and brazen one to, even though you're still getting the same ad revenue, go up against your own channel, but go to a different family of networks for an alternate cast. I'm very intrigued to see the numbers on this because I think this could drastically change the way Monday Night Football is presented. I think they'll still have the main feed, but this is only one game, right? Just like the NFL Week 1 last week. But one game in, they had their bumps, they got their stride. By the time this is all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing it every Monday night next week.
Yeah, here it is. Overreaction Tuesday to Peyton and Eli.
That's what I'm here for, baby.
Okay, percentage of people you think in Indianapolis that would rather watch Peyton and Eli?
Indy?
And let's say that everybody knows about Peyton and Eli on ESPN2, because I think that is part of it as well. Once people realize that it's Peyton and Eli, that you can watch that telecast instead of watching Levy, Greasy, and Riddick, What do you think?
75.
Yeah.
I want to go 80, but I feel like that's maybe too much. But I would say 75.
I was thinking 80. And I realize there is a small percentage of the fan base that do want a little bit more straightforward telecast. And ESPN's got things to clean up. Like, they have things to clean up on their end where, again, they flat out miss some plays. Just the smoothness and going to breaks.
Yeah, hey, Mark,
things like that.
Please,
all that.
Before we go to commercial, please don't count us down if you don't mind. Like, just make sure that's...
I mean, literally. Like,
that was great.
In their ear, 10, 9, 8. I'm like, gosh. And it kept on going. Like,
yeah, I know.
It wasn't something that was just one commercial break, and it kept on happening.
Stand by for break. And it's like, okay, all right.
We'll have some Peyton and Eli audio that we'll get to as well. Again, it's Kevin Bowen and Jimmy Cook here on the Fan Morning Show. Mike Wells, 8:30. Gregg, Doyel, 9 o'clock. When we come back, we'll hit a Big O Tires and
10,
some Colts
9.
news that we need to get to as well. You're listening to the Fan Morning Show here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5.
Come back and won in week 2.
The bounce back
But as
Colts.
Scotty told us yesterday, 2014, 15, 16, 17, the Colts started 0-2 in each of those 4 seasons. If you look at that 5-game stretch for the Colts to start the year, those teams went 3-2 in week 1, the Titans and the Ravens losing. We talked a little bit about the Eli Peyton action from last night. If you missed it, here's Eli commenting on Peyton's ability to quiet the Indianapolis faithful at the line of scrimmage.
You were lucky, Peyton. Everybody liked you. Eli knows what it's like to be booed at home. Trust me.
I do.
He went play in New York.
I do. I know Jacobs all too well. All right, good run. Peyton had he had that stadium so well trained. I mean, when he was on offense, no one was allowed to talk. I swear, the fans would get fined if they asked for a drink. They're like, "Can I get a beer?" Like, "Hey, be quiet. Wait till the defense order your beer."
Yeah. Wait till Mellencamp comes on, and then you can scream and yell, or the same soundtrack we've heard in that stadium for 30-some years. That was Charles Barkley at the start of that clip as well. I don't think anything made Peyton more mad last night than the Vegas crowd being loud when Derek Carr came to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. I mean,
He was irate at that.
you can't have that.
It's like, dude, it's Vegas. They're going to have half road fans at every single game this season.
Then the Raiders fans that are there might just be people that bought it 5 minutes before they walked in on a nice little Vegas trip,
Right,
enjoying the
exactly.
NFL and the strip.
I hit blackjack, so here I am, at the game or whatnot. Raiders come back and win in overtime 33-27. The Ravens, frankly, blew that game. We mentioned earlier 98 straight games. Baltimore had one with a 14-point lead or greater. Derek Carr, Jimmy, 34 of 56 for 435. How about the AFC West?
AFC West also undefeated on the weekend. Not going to matter, but it's nice that it's there. Good to
Chargers
for
and
them.
Broncos feasting on the NFC East certainly helped there. But yeah, the AFC West and the NFC West both go undefeated. For those that went to bed early, a.k.a. me, I missed 5 scores in the final quarter. Justin Tucker hits a 47-yarder with 37
automatic, by the way. The second they got past the 50, it was going OT.
But then how about Daniel Carlson from 55 to force the game into overtime for
Or
the Raiders?
in the league, excuse me, my bad. Yes.
That was with 2 seconds to go. And then overtime was wild. Carr throws a pick on the first possession, right, in the end zone. Then Lamar Jackson fumbles.
Yes.
And
but before that happened, they had scored,
Right,
and
right.
Lamar Jackson and Derek Carr embraced it midfield like people were getting ready to exchange jerseys, and then he's clearly down. You got to redo it. Carr throws that pick. Jackson fumbles like you mentioned, and then they got a delay of game penalty before they ended up. You kept saying it was cover 0 and bring the house were the Ravens, and then they had that loft pass, blown coverage, and Zay Jones scores. That's it.
Yeah,
Game
just
over.
a wild game from 2 teams that I think will be kind of on the fringe of the playoff picture all year long. College football this weekend, it is a big one in Bloomington. Honestly, I can't remember the last time the program has had a home game, or, frankly, I guess a game of this magnitude. They will host number 8 Cincinnati at noon. I haven't seen a line yet on that. Have you seen anything, Mark, on that? Yeah, I know it's still early in the week, but there
3-point underdog, according to Fan Nation, which is one of those Sports Illustrated's fan sites. So IU opens the 3-point dog at home to 8th-ranked Cincy.
IU 6th in the receiving votes from the polls yesterday. Like I said, Cincinnati is ranked 8th, and again, that is noon on ESPN. Hopefully, we'll have Dave Revson on later in the week to talk about that one and the game in South Bend. Purdue at Notre Dame. That line is out. Notre Dame -7.5. What did the pollsters think of Notre Dame's escape against Toledo? They dropped 4 spots.
Not surprised. That's about where I thought it would be. I figured they'd fall outside the top 10. They were 9 going into that game. Struggled mightily against, particularly in the trenches, versus Toledo.
And Florida State, for that matter.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has given up 10 sacks to 2 average football teams. Think about that, Jimmy. This offensive line of reload, it's got more of a rebuild.
And what's wild is they were really heavily praised in the offseason about the O-line. That was viewed as a strength. Even the broadcasters in that Florida State game were praising it. And you lose, your left tackle in consecutive weeks, different left tackles in consecutive weeks. I told you this yesterday, KB. I'm not going to bet this because I'm an Irish fan and I don't want that on me when I'm in South Bend, but I would take the points with Purdue. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. Purdue could potentially upset them on Saturday.
I saw the stat yesterday, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Purdue is looking for their first 3-0 start since 2007.
No way. Really?
I maybe need to double check that.
I mean, no, I trust you.
Like, how have you not had one season where the non-conference schedule hasn't been crazy daunting and you beat, whoever?
Probably because the third game is usually very daunting, as this trend is facing a top 10 Irish team.
Yeah, early in the year. Yeah, Scotty shoots this to me. Cincinnati minus 3.5, over-under at 50. The over-under Purdue Notre Dame, I saw 58.5 for that. We mentioned yesterday Xander Horvath, the big Purdue running back. He's going to be out, and Jeff Brom confirmed that yesterday. It sucks because he's a local kid. He's a South Bend local kid, and obviously that game in Notre Dame Stadium, you hate that for him. Some other college football poll news. Iowa up to number 5. Ohio State goes from 3 to 9. Penn State is at 10. Wisconsin 18. Michigan at number 25. How about Clay Helton getting the axe yesterday?
Yeah, you hate to see things scrambled at USC. I mean, honestly, it's tough. I mean, such a storied program, and I don't care. I'm glad. I want to see the Trojans. I want to see the Trojans continue to suffer year over year. I'm still bitter about the Bush push. I'm still bitter about the Charlie Weiss era as a whole. That's one of Notre Dame's top rivals. I'm fine with them burning directly to the ground year over year.
Jeez. Tell us how you really. I was going to say, you sound like Gregg Rakestraw talking about the Padres. Who are they hiring?
Hopefully Charlie Weiss.
What about Bill O'Brien?
Yes, please hire Bill O'Brien. Actually, he wasn't.
I was going to say,
fine at
as
Penn
much
State,
as we seem to make fun of Bill O'Brien, he had a nice run at Penn State, and frankly, his tenure in Houston as a head coach was much better than a GM, and they had several double-digit win seasons.
You know how you accidentally sometimes overwrite a file, like you're saving something, maybe a Word document, and you save the wrong thing? That's what happened for me with Bill O'Brien with his Texans career. I can't really remember his time at Penn State because of how just atrocious his Texans tenure was.
Moving over to Major League Baseball, the Reds back in action tonight against Cathedral product Dylan Peters. I forgot he was pitching for the Pirates. The Reds are a half game up again. Again, who wants it less? The Padres lose last night, but the Cardinals win. The Cardinals have now won 5 straight. They beat the Mets 7-0, so they are only a half game back. Phillies 2.5 back. Mets fall to 3.5 back. Your Yankees come back and beat the Twins 6-5 there.
Back in the playoffs if it ended today. It's a roller coaster.
I haven't looked at the AL wild card in quite a while. That is just as jumbled, if not more jumbled.
Yeah, because Boston lost yesterday. They're in basically a virtual tie, but I guess New York would get the tie break if I'm reading these standings correctly.
Tie for the final spot.
For the final spot. Blue Jays
still up again.
Won 4 straight. Their run differential has only increased to plus 174. They've put up 32 runs their last 2 games. I mean, whatever. Even if the Yankees make the playoffs, Toronto's just on another planet right now. Particularly offensively, New York has 3 on the road in Baltimore. They need all 3.
When we come back on the Fan Morning Show, we'll get back into the Colts conversation there. A couple things that Frank Reich said yesterday that stood out, and talking about the linebacker play, which I thought was not up to the Colts standard at all. I'm Kevin Bowen. He's Jimmy Cook. Mike Wells, 8:30. Gregg Doyel, 9 o'clock. Fan Morning Show.
Morning Show with Kevin Bowen on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Jimmy Cook back in another day. He'll be with us again tomorrow. Mike Wells at 8:30. Gregg Doyel, 9 o'clock, 317-239-1070. We'll get into some more Colts chatter here in this segment. I mentioned last segment about Purdue looking for their first 3-0 start since 2007, and I didn't know how that was possible. And one of my buddies responds with, "It's Purdue, Kevin. That's why." So I think that sums up.
Well said.
Boiler Nation right there. All right, Braden Smith, foot injury. Jimmy, not that foot injury, the Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson foot injury.
Because if it was, we got problems.
Yeah, we got a lot of problems. Some might argue there still are problems because, again, another offensive lineman getting hurt here. We'll see the severity of that a little bit later in the week, and just if Braden Smith is going to miss time. Obviously, you could have a domino effect if you get Eric Fisher back in the lineup this week, which I think there's a possibility, and I don't say that just because Mike Wells and I had a friendly wager on when he would make his debut with the Colts, and I have this Sunday. I think there's a legit chance he plays on Sunday. Would you then move Julian Davenport over to right tackle, who just played left tackle? The other option you could go with is Matt Pryor, not Mark Pryor, Matt Pryor, who the Colts traded for just before the start of the season, came over from Philadelphia. He had 3 starts last year at right tackle. But nonetheless, going up against the LA Rams, questions at offensive tackle, even though Aaron Donald is an interior presence, not good.
I don't see how this gets fixed in a week. And I wouldn't have known if it was possible to fix it in a week, even if Braden Smith was healthy. That O-line was dreadful on Sunday. You lose Smith now. If Fisher doesn't come back, then you're left with all kinds of different decisions. Like you mentioned, what do you do with Davenport? I expect you probably leave him on the left side if there's no Fisher. I don't know what your other options would be.
Right. If Fisher doesn't play, Davenport again is your left tackle, and I'd assume if Braden then doesn't play, it'd be this Matt Pryor at your right tackle, which the fact that it's week 2 and you're starting Julian Davenport and potentially Matt Pryor at right tackle is just, I've gone back to this several times, Jimmy. One of the biggest mistakes to me in the Chris Ballard era has been this weird no addressing of offensive tackle in the draft. Like when you look at Ballard's drafts, they drafted Zach Banner, a tackle out of USC in the first draft. I don't know if Zach Banner made it a year here in Indianapolis. Some have told me that was more of a Joe Philbin pick if you want to go back to the Chuck Pagano era there. Then the next year, they draft a kid in the 7th round, which, you draft someone in the 7th round, you might as well draft, blue. They draft Jackson Barton out of Utah. I think he actually had a brief stint with your Chiefs when the Chiefs had a bunch of injuries on the O-line there. He didn't make it very deep into his rookie year, and that's it. Like, that position to me, one of the most important positions on a football team, and you have not drafted a tackle in the last 3 drafts when Anthony Costanzo said, yep, I'm going to retire, and it's going to happen pretty soon. It just is such a major, major issue that is now catching up to this football team. We saw it late last year, and it's catching up again because, frankly, your offensive linemen right now at tackle, they're just a bunch of cast-offs. And they're a bunch of sloppy seconds from bad offensive lines. Philly's lines sucked last year. You've got a cast-off from them. Houston's offensive line where Davenport was, or Miami where he was. Like, you know what you're getting. And how do you not draft a tackle? I'm not saying you necessarily need to spend a first-round pick on a tackle, but when Ballard took the job, a major thing, I know Dan has hit on this as well, and obviously Dan has a pretty aggressive stance on the Ryan Grigson era, but Dan has mentioned that the lack of development from your coaching staff in that era was not there. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Ballard was like, we need teachers on this coaching staff. You've got to develop. You don't just draft and say, all right, we're good.
It's not magic, KB.
No, it is not magic. You got to develop, particularly that position. And the fact that you haven't given this coaching staff like a 3rd round, 4th round, even a 5th round tackle that has some traits you like and try to develop them, big, big mistake by the GM.
Here's my thing, though, and it's becoming less prominent in the National Football League. I think you can get away with it more. But traditionally speaking, you can jump on me if I'm wrong here. If you're not taking a player of that position, I'm talking about somebody on your O-line in the first 3, maybe 4 rounds, It's a developmental project. It's not going to be something that automatically resets the deck and gives you competency that suddenly fills that void. You're going to have growing pains there. Much less so in the first couple rounds, like a quarterback or a running back, are you going to have instant success on the O-line. It does take time, to your point about having proper teachers that are able to develop those pieces. So on the one hand, like this past year, I'll be honest, I don't dive deep into the draft like you do. Like I'm more of a casual follower of the NFL draft. So I don't know if there were strong options that they passed on or they should have snatched up. But there's no doubt, and Dan has mentioned this before, knowing Costanzo had one foot out the door a couple years ago, it definitely should have been a point of emphasis the last two drafts, and that is a rightful, kind of nail in their coffin, so to speak, of where we're at right now with the O-line.
The Costanzo aspect is one thing. I also think the other aspect that's a bit head-scratching to me is, Jimmy, we talked about it yesterday, the biggest core belief for Chris Ballard and Frank Reich roster building is offensive line play and excelling in the trenches. And yet you've ignored that position now really for 4 straight drafts. I don't count a 7th-round pick as an actual tackle that you believe is going to come in here and stay. And so that, to me, is just what in the world is happening when you have this major investment into so many pieces up front. You have a big investment into the run game as well. The fact that you've ignored tackle, I think, is one of the big black eyes, honestly, on Chris Ballard and this roster building. There's a lot of good things that he's done and a lot of positions that you consider strengths, and they've drafted well. But with how important tackle is in general and how important it is to Chris Ballard, him and Ryan Grigson differ a lot on offensive line philosophy. Grigson was honestly following the Polian script. Grigson was like, hey, especially in the interior of the offensive line, you don't invest there. You can find late round picks. Hell, you can find undrafted free agents. The guy we had on yesterday, Jeff Saturday, being one of those. You don't need to put major resources into that. Ballard tried that for a year. Actually thought Grigson, had some pieces that were good for him, and then was like, oh my, Jacoby Brissett is getting violently hit. Like, we need to, go in a different direction. Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, those draft picks happened there. And so Ballard has now kind of changed his tune on that, but he hasn't changed his tune when it's come to offensive tackle.
Yeah, and that's just, I don't know. The way Carson Wentz plays, and I think this will be solidified once Eric Fisher comes back. The way Carson Wentz has traditionally played, and it dates back to his college years, is he likes rollout action. He likes to make plays on his feet, abandoning pockets sometimes. Like, it might not end up mattering against the middle to back end of their schedule, but against elite teams, that's where it becomes a major problem, not having consistency on the O-line. Because on the one hand, if you just have competence, and that was not competence on Sunday, the way that Wentz plays, I think you'll be all right more often than not, as long as he's mobile. If he loses his mobility, we've already seen him, freak injury, whatever you want to call it, and he's been hurt before in his career, then that's off the table. But week to week, I still feel like if Wentz can reach that dynamic level of play, it might not be the end of the world when you're playing non-elite talent.
We'll get a little bit more into the Carson Wentz debate kind of along those lines. There was an interesting stat from Sunday's game that Frank Reich hadn't really looked at too much. That was brought up yesterday that we'll hit on. Let's get to Derek. Wants to talk about Darius Leonard, which I'm glad he's bringing this up. What's up, Derek?
Yeah, I just wondered, where was Darius? Before that fumble happened, they didn't call his name. Like 6 tackles, I think he had.
Yeah, he had one tackle. Thank you, Derek. One tackle. Or actually, I think his first tackle came with like 5 minutes to go in the first half. I thought you're paying Darius Leonard $100 million. Way, way, way too quiet in the first half. And really on that 3rd and 1, go back and watch that. Chris Carson, the big run. Leonard just gets blown up. Blown up.
Had 3 stops in total on the day, and surprisingly enough, that led the entire, linebacking corpse of the Colts yesterday, or excuse me, on Sunday. But you're right, it was super quiet in the first half. It's not what you're used to, particularly with what you have invested in Leonard. He did have that big turnover, and you mentioned it yesterday, and others in the market have mentioned it as well. he's a playmaker. Like that's why you're paying him that, but you would like to see it over the course of the full game. And again, it's week 1. Like that's an anomaly for me right now.
Yeah, but it is something I think you got to watch.
Yes,
because
yes.
There's questions, rightfully so, about Leonard and Bobby Okereke holding up against true teams that are going to come up and just pound it at you. And you're going to see it with Tennessee. If you face Cleveland down the road, you're certainly going to see it there. I know they don't exactly run it in the most traditional sense, but even with the injuries, Baltimore's still going to run it at you as well. So teams are going to test you in between the tackles, and the fact that you were such a good run defense team last year, and on that 3rd and 1 early in the game on Sunday, a Seattle team that is not this vaunted rushing attack said, we're going to line up, and we're going to run it right at you in between the tackles. Leonard gets blown up, Okereke misses a tackle, and that's 33 yards down the field. Teams know Leonard and Okereke are not built to be between the tackles and just bang heads all game long.
I know it's not necessarily vaunted, but Chris Carson is probably one of the most underrated running backs in the National Football League. I mean, he is. He's top-tier talent. Russell Wilson.
But again, Leonard got blown up on that play by a tight end.
He did. My acknowledgement of it, though, is that, I mean, they have the capability to do it, and it doesn't get talked about enough because of how talented Russell Wilson is and the gifts that he has at receiver, the like of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. However, Leonard as a whole, when I have a star player, and Leonard is, a top-level star player in this league, I want accountability. And he was incredibly accountable. We played the audio on Sunday. It's one thing to say it. You've acknowledged it now. Now I need improvement next week. I expect that from Darius Leonard.
Kevin says, going back to our drafting of a tackle conversation, are you pretending Braden Smith wasn't drafted to be a tackle? No, Braden Smith was not drafted to be a tackle. He started at guard for over 30 games at Auburn. The Colts were adamant that they never thought he could be a tackle at this level. Hell, Braden Smith didn't think that he could be a tackle at this level at all. And I mean, sadly, tragically, it took Denzel Good's brother dying back in that 2018 season to where all of a sudden the Colts had a scramble in a short week. Denzel Good, was at the funeral for his brother. And next thing you know, they try Braden Smith at tackle and go on from there. Before we get to I Gotta Know with Mark Dykton, let's sneak in Dave. Dave is on the line. What's up, Dave?
Hey, guys, I was just wondering, do you know if Xavier Rhodes is going to play this weekend since you've already placed a bet on the Rams?
Well, no, I don't. I wish Jimmy had that insight. Or I don't know, Jimmy, do you have that insight?
No, I don't have that insight. I'm going off of Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, and a number of other things that I saw from both matchups. Xavier Rhodes or not, I still feel comfortable laying the 4 there.
Yeah, I would say, Dave, I don't know that. My guess is Xavier Rhodes is a bit iffy for this week, but I would say you'd find a lot of people out there that no matter Xavier Rhodes playing or not, that factors in.
In fact, I hope that's why the line is what it is right now, and that maybe he comes back and it gets lower because of that. Maybe Vegas isn't that dumb, but, I can hope.
We got Mike Wells, 8:30, Gregg Doyel, 9 o'clock. It's Mark Dykton. I Gotta Know time.
All right, boys. Outside of the Colts, what was the best and worst thing you saw in Week 1?
Kyler Murray, the best. The play of the NFC North, the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Just pathetic.
This is totally unbiased by me.
And probably Green Bay in particular. I mean, what was that?
I'm glad you went there. I'm glad you went there.
I know. Mark's back, so you got to go there. And shout out to Mike Wells. Maybe Jameis Winston for Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah, so far so good for Wellesley. I would go Jameis Winston solely as the best thing that I saw in Week 1. Worst thing, go from a local standpoint, would have to be the Colts O-line. Worst thing, big picture, the early production struggles of Monday Night Football last night with Peyton and Eli.
I say the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, they're just fun to watch, and they just flat out routed the Titans. And then Aaron Rodgers' master plan to destroy the Packers from within with his on-field play. I love it. Genius work, Aaron Rodgers. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing.
So we've already had a bitter.
When's Justin Fields starting? Do we know yet?
We already had a bitter
4,
Yankees
probably.
fan comment. Now we've a bitter Bears fan comment.
I got a bitter Notre Dame comment in there.
And then the worst. Oh my God, Urban Meyer and the Jaguars. I probably on me. I expected more from their performance, and they were just awful.
Should we start the Urban Meyer to USC rumor?
Man, they were not good at all. Biggest concern for the Rams offense coming in on Sunday?
I think it's just Stafford's arm. Like, his arm alone pushes those safeties back a little bit more. And then that obviously opens up of, all right, can they run it against a lighter box? I would like to hope the Colts could hold up in the run game a little bit better than they did. Because even if you take out the big Carson run, I think Carson was still, right around 4 yards per carry. And obviously you got to factor in that big run as well. So I would just say the arm of Stafford is what worries me the most.
Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods worry me the most. If you look at in terms of both their more Robert Woods down vertical threat capabilities, and then just the in space catching success of Cooper Kupp. If you're gonna rush and you're gonna be in situations where you get burnt big, just like you did against Seattle, you need to be able to get rushed and get pressure to the quarterback. Rattle Matthew Stafford early and often.
And the other thing, too, Mark, is Seattle's new offense coordinator came from the Sean McVay coaching tree, was in L.A. with the Rams. So I know it's different quarterback styles necessarily, but Wilson and Stafford can both chuck it. It's just how they attack the Colts. I think you're going to see something pretty similar.
Yeah, I say the two-headed monster of Woods and Kupp, because similar to Lockett and Metcalf, if one's not getting covered, then the other one's open. So it could be bad.
But then Van Jefferson, he had a couple big plays for them.
And Higbee, too. Tyler Higbee's no slouch either. So
right.
they're going to have their hands full. And the Colts secondary that's banged up. We'll see. That's all I got to know.
That's Mark Dykton right there with I Gotta Know. When we come back on the Fan Morning Show, we'll get back into a little bit of Carson Wentz stuff and what Frank Reich did not like from his quarterback on Sunday. It's Kevin Bowen. It's Jimmy Cook. Mike Wells, 8:30. Gregg Doyel, 9 o'clock. Fan Morning Show. Welcome back to the Fan Morning Show. Jimmy Cook in again with us on this Tuesday morning. He will be with us again on Wednesday as well. We'll have Mike Wells at the bottom of the hour, Gregg, Doyel at 9 o'clock. We talk some Peyton Eli in the opening segment there. Wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on Carson Wentz here. 317-239-1070 at KBowen1070 on Twitter as well. You know, Jimmy, it's not often that Frank Reich, publicly kind of criticizes a player. So you really have to kind of look deeper into what Frank Reich says to find out those moments. And yesterday, he mentioned a couple of times how he felt like the pre-snap issues offensively were on Carson Wentz. And for Frank Reich to say that means he wasn't very happy with Carson Wentz handling some stuff pre-snap. And I think people will be quick to say, well, that's, Frank, he needs to be better in that situation, blah, 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 blah. Frank Reich is a big, big believer in, no matter his quarterback, they have discretion at the line for just about anything. Something we talked about with Jeff Saturday yesterday as well. He did that with Jacoby, did that with Andrew, certainly did with Phillip Rivers last year as well. But that seemed to be kind of his biggest negative with Carson Wentz yesterday. It was that typically Frank gives his quarterbacks a kind of veto decision-making process on about a dozen plays during the course of a game. Like, here's the play. You're going to see the defense, and you've got to make the correct call off this play. And whether it was that or the pass protection, Frank wasn't too pleased with his quarterback in those areas.
See, but that's tough for me because on the one hand, you're like, okay, I'm going to give my quarterbacks, my leader of the offense, discretion at the line. But then in a game where of the 38 passes that he threw, 15 of them were under pressure, and pretty much every statistical category and every metric you can measure quarterback success dropped off just astoundingly when Wentz was pressured yesterday. Like, it's tough for me to...
But does some of that come from Wentz not getting them in the right pass protections? I don't...
It could.
Me personally, I just think the Colts flat out missed some one-on-ones several times. But is that part of it?
I would, rightfully so, I would bend the knee, so to speak, to Frank Reich in that regard and take his word for it. Because he's going to know better than anybody other than Wentz himself. So if he feels like, I don't know if he's protecting the O-line... or if that's genuinely what he saw in the film, if that's what he's saying and he's being honest about it, and he genuinely saw from what was called and what ended up actually happening that it was because of Wentz's adjustments, then that's fine. I'm willing to buy that for a week. But also in times when there was a clean pocket, we had a lot of checkdowns too from Wentz. There was a lot that went wrong across the board, offensively especially on Sunday.
Matt tweeted in, would love to hear your thoughts about how Phillip Rivers actually bailed out Frank Reich last year with adjustments at the line. If Carson Wentz can't adjust at the line, may we see some warts in Reich's play calling? I think it's an interesting point to bring up. I also I know there were some questions in Philadelphia about how much leverage Carson Wentz had at the line of scrimmage. But again, here in Indianapolis, Frank Reich's going to give you as much as you have ever had if you play the quarterback position. I felt like in general, Jimmy, and I know your O-line didn't help you out here, but I just thought the play calling was way too conservative down the field. Now, I would have helped out Julian Davenport a little bit more. I would have probably max protect a little bit more. But you have got to take some chances down the field, particularly against a team in Seattle that is so willing to play Jamal Adams as a linebacker. Like, they are going to cheat up. They're going to load that box. And they stopped Jonathan Taylor very, very well. I thought that Frank Reich was way too restrictive in what Carson Wentz was allowed to do vertically. And I don't know if your wideouts created the amount of separation that certainly you want moving forward, but still, you've got to play to your quarterback's strengths, and that strength is his arm. His arm talent is real. It's not the quick rhythm game. Yes, you want to sprinkle that in, but if you look at the plays down the field, outside of that one to Paris Campbell off the play action, I can't think of many chances down the field, let alone completions.
Yeah, roughly less than 8 yards per attempt for the most part yesterday, roughly around that range.
Was it that high?
Yeah. Well, I should clarify that. That was with clean pocket when he had time, which again I mentioned. 38 passes yesterday. 23 of those instances were when he had time, when he had a clean pocket. This is, of course, what's defined by Pro Football Focus. It was less than 6 yards per attempt when he was under pressure.
Gotcha. The other thing that Reich was surprised about, and we mentioned this a little bit yesterday, is Carson Wentz's time to throw. It was 2.9 seconds, which, again, I know that we should provide some context around that. It was the 5th slowest of anybody in the NFL yesterday. Philip Rivers, if I'm not mistaken, last year hovered around like 2.3, 2.4, which is really quick. I know that 5/10, 6/10 might not seem like a lot, but it is a lot when you're talking about quarterbacks getting rid of the ball. Carson Wentz is going to take time to throw the football. Now, where I think you worry is for Carson Wentz to take time to throw the football, you've got to hit on chunks. You've got to make some plays down the field. If the Carson Wentz holding onto the ball is like Jacoby Brissett holding onto the ball, in that you're not throwing with anticipation, you're not processing things as fast, that's where you are particularly worried. So that is a number just to watch as the year moves along. I think Frank is fine with it being a little bit longer. If it's going to be longer, though, you need more plays over 20 yards.
And see, but it's just such a tough spot to be in, because your debate is it, man, Wentz holding on to the ball too long, or is it, well, he's not having enough time. He needs to have more time. That's why he came here, because it's a luxury offensive line, and it's supposed to play into that strength of him being able to hold on the ball longer and let things develop. If that offensive line continues to struggle, and it's definitely going to without Braden Smith. That's going to happen.
And to be fair, we don't know yet how long Braden Smith is going to be out. If he's going to miss time, I guess
that's a good point.
We should just throw in that.
So that's still up in the air. Let's say he doesn't miss time, for instance. Let's just use the baseline O-line that's there, and you're still waiting on Eric Fisher to get there. It's a one-game sample size, but if these struggles are going to be present, and I think they are going to be present when Aaron Donald comes down on Sunday, where do the changes happen? Are you asking Wentz to now change his play style and get rid of the ball quicker? Or are you just going to bite the bullet on it until the offensive line stabilize and accept that there might be some checkdowns involved there?
I do think the fact that Carson Wentz got hit 10 times on Sunday, Jimmy, one of the highest he's had really in a long, long time, and that was what he looked like, that has to be encouraging for Colts fans. Like, again, you have a very high expectation for quarterback play, which I totally get. But, like, if that is the floor for Carson Wentz under that amount of pressure and the run game not being as supportive as you would like it, I feel like if you're a Colts fan, how do you not walk away? There are some other issues, certainly. But again, if that's the floor, you got to be pleased.
I know I'm being too hard here, and you could rip me, that's fine. But that floor is not going to be good enough to win you many ball games if that's the complete nature of the team.
But aren't you expecting your O-line to be better with Fisher? Aren't you expecting your run game to be better? Your defense not to give up. I mean, that 69-yarder on 2nd and 20, that's Florida State, Jacksonville State stuff.
But it has to be there, right? What I'm saying is I'm alluding to the idea that it doesn't get better. Maybe the defense doesn't get better. And I think it will. But my point is, if it does not, and you continue to have struggles and holes, and let's say it's a flawed offensive line, or let's say it's a flawed defense over the course of 7 or 8 games, that floor is not going to be good enough.
Let's go to Kurt. Kurt wants to talk about Frank Reich and Carson Wentz. Morning, Kurt.
Hey, guys. I like all your comments. I guess the way I would look at it is I saw a total team from coaching to all sides of the ball look horrible. But you still have to come out with the scapegoat at the first of the week. I wouldn't say anybody did a good performance. And we heard all this stuff about when the first game and all that. I think he got on Wentz because he's got enough trust in him. He knows that if he blows him out, he's going to be okay. But I saw that man get hit as much as Jack Trudeau used to get hit. You can't play football when you have a defensive tackle and linebacker hitting you from the back and the front at the same time, and then get up and play again. I just think the coach couldn't throw everybody under the bus, so he picked the one he thought had the most strength, and that's our scapegoat.
Interesting, Kurt. Boy, that's a lot deeper than I was going on that. Part of me says, isn't Carson Wentz a little bit fragile?
Well,
right
that is
now?
it, right? I understand the sentiment there, and I don't disagree that maybe.
And to be fair, Frank Reich also mentioned the O-line did not play to the standard.
It wasn't
that
just
you
Wentz,
have.
but again, and this is like it is with everything. Quarterbacks across the board are always going to draw headlines and draw eyeballs whenever they're mentioned. So I'm not surprised that Wentz is the focal point of that's getting picked apart a little bit. I don't think it's fair because you're right. His floor was fine yesterday or on Sunday. The defense and the O-line were dreadful. However, he left. I mean, this isn't the only reason he left Philadelphia, but that was the major mark against him. That it was an incredibly tough media market, an incredibly tough fan base. This is a simpler. I don't want to say nicer, but like it is. It's not the same level of pressure that there is.
Yeah, it's closer to Fargo, South Dakota than Philadelphia is. It's Kurt, to your point, Carson did on his own go out of his way to say after the game, I'd like a handful of plays back from a pass protection standpoint. So I do think there is some validity to it. I'm just pointing out that, Phillip Rivers was so masterful in that aspect of the game. Carson has got to get there. And Aaron also brings up a good point. One thought I had while watching the Colts game was, are the receivers able to get open? The TV feed focuses so much on the pass rush, so it's hard to tell with that angle. There were some times where I thought down the field you didn't have the separation that you needed to have. And I also felt like you didn't test Seattle enough. If you just take one shot down the field with Paris Campbell early in a game, what does that do to Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs? Do they think twice about cheating up or really attacking that underneath route? I just felt like that was a missed opportunity.
Well, that's the other issue with not taking chances, right? Because you have a receiver room that is attempting to stake claim to I'm your number one option right here. I'm your number one wide receiver. Somebody that's trying to step up in T.Y. Hilton's absence. And I'm not saying there has to be one, but you don't really know who that is yet because there weren't a ton of chances that were taken on Sunday.
And to get back to the Reich and the play calling thing for just a second, Jimmy, we mentioned a little bit of this. One touch for Paris Campbell in 40-some snaps. Like, we don't know how long Paris Campbell's going to stay healthy. when he's on the field,
I joked about it.
You got to have him touch the ball a little bit more than that.
I joked about it yesterday, but I was worried about him on Sunday after just the one catch that he had.
I mean, I would have been worried about any wideout getting smoked like that, let alone him. And I just felt like way too many screens, and just Frank in general treating Carson Wentz like he was the walk-on freshman thrust into duty in a big rivalry game on the road and not a quarterback that has been in the NFL and is playing the Seattle Seahawks. You're not beating the Seattle Seahawks without taking some chances. I mean, Seattle took plenty of chances, and it paid off in a big way for him. I know Richard's been hanging in there. Let's go to Richard on line one. What's up, Richard?
Hey, excuse me. Hey, I just feel like there's no accountability on this team. I feel like they don't hold the people accountable. Nobody wants to talk to the players mean. Nobody wants to. And Frank Wright, as far as I'm concerned, I would have fired him after yesterday, but that's just me.
Richard, fire and brimstone there, going with the old axe on. That would have been a Robert Irsay decision. I don't think a Jim Irsay move on that point. To his accountability point, though, Jimmy.
Did nobody listen to Darius Leonard's press conference?
Well, I think
that's one. I mean, it's one off the bat.
If I'm guessing, Richard is saying that in reference to Frank.
Just the coach. Okay, that's fine.
Richard would like more public accountability from Frank Reich. Frank is never going to go there. Where I have a question about Frank is, again, public accountability is never going to be his thing, but private accountability must be there. And I think at times that's been a question mark. To me, he's coddled Adam Vinatieri to the media. He coddled Jacoby Brissett to the media. That can't be happening to the point where it seeps into your decision making. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. My biggest issue with it all is that it feels like a narrative thing at this point. Like Andy Reid, in terms of press conferences, I understand I'm a Chiefs fan. I know I'm using this, but I just bear with me.
Jimmy's first Chiefs reference of the day.
And if you took the over, you're sitting pretty on that because it's very shocking it took that long. He's very soft spoken to the media. He's not an angry guy, yet he's viewed as one of the most successful coaches of his era. Save Belichick, won a Super Bowl a year ago. Like, it doesn't have to be. I don't need public lambashings, but you're right to your point. I want something going on behind closed doors. I don't need people going blue in the face, screaming at people, like whatever. Everybody reacts differently to different styles of coaching, but I need something to know that the points are there and that it's being stressed in a way that is most beneficial to said player. Every player is different. Some players like a good kick in the rear end. Others
like LeBruce Arians.
Correct. It just depends, but that feels like just a talking point to me. Like, I don't need every coach screaming blue in the face to me to know that the teams are playing well.
Yeah, the big thing for me is Frank Reich has, he comes from this faith background and he believes in his players so much and all of that, but you cannot let that cloud.
It has to be balanced.
The honest decision makings of, all right, we need to make a move here. We need to be a little bit more critical. That has got to be, and I feel like at times his belief and his wanting to just get behind his players has led to some poor decision making. And just in general, it's a little bit more of a bigger picture thing. I've always been a fan of a coach that isn't calling plays. And I understand that that's kind of Frank's MO, and like that's where he considers his strength. So I get that. But like the Pete Carroll, the Mike Tomlin, the Belichick, when you're more of the CEO and you're more of the manager of everything that's going on a game day, I just think you have a better understanding of your entire football team. And at times, I worry about Frank looking at his defense and not having a great idea of what tweaks need to be made on that side of the ball. And just, we'll let Matt Eberflus do his thing. We'll do our thing on offense, and we'll meet up on Sundays.
It's arguably one of the toughest things that a coach has to balance on game day, particularly if you come from a background of signal calling. Because at some point, you have to know, okay, maybe I'm overexposed here. Maybe
Did Andy Reid give it up? Is Bieniemy doing it?
Yes and no. I think that Reid is still heavily involved with that, but Bieniemy is the one that's sending in the play call. But it's still very much a collective effort. But Bieniemy is leading the charge.
Got it.
Week to week.
Let's sneak Anthony in before we hit a Big O Tires. What's up, Anthony?
Hey, guys. Just curious, we hear all this pressure from Jim Irsay talking about you need to win week one, you need to do this, you need to do that. When do we actually see some of that into effect with the coaching staff?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I asked Jeff Saturday yesterday, Anthony, when is 8 straight losses in week one no longer a coincidence?
2022.
Well, no. I mean, seriously,
You know what I mean?
If this trend continues, no. And I know it spans multiple regimes, but I just think how the Colts approach the offseason. The players, they wanted it soft in the spring. There are a lot of teams out there that didn't want it soft in the spring. The players wanted it soft. They got their way. Frank Reich and Chris Bauer, to me, should have sat down those players and said, all right, if we're going to go soft in the spring, we need to get a little bit more physical come camp, maybe play some frontline guys in the preseason. I thought it was mismanagement of the offseason that is continually translated to not only losing week one games, Jimmy, but to me, when you look at these first 5 games, oh boy, you better be ready. You better be ready because you're behind the 8 ball right now and you're playing some, obviously one of the best teams in the NFL, I think, come Sunday.
Maybe it's because I knew they weren't winning on Sunday. Maybe it's because you knew they weren't winning on Sunday. If I remember correctly, in the Beers with Bowen, you had made your official prediction. You had picked a Colts loss to the Seahawks. Maybe it's that makes me think, whatever. Like, it's unfortunate they've lost 8 straight, but look, the Colts have the ability with, 16 games left on the schedule now for that not to matter. Like, that stinks, but
sure, and
they have the ability to make that go away.
There's 7 teams that make the playoffs, and the AFC South is the easiest division in the AFC.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter, to be clear.
Right. It's the fact that, once again, you're behind the 8 ball. You have a much tougher schedule than you had last year. And if you get off to a poor start and you're somewhat healthy, what happens if you get to early November and you lose a couple of major frontline starters for a month? When you need to win 7 of 9 to get back into it. A couple of years ago, they started 1-5 and then they won 9 of 10. Well, that just doesn't happen every single year. So to me, it's just playing with fire. Mike Wells in 10 minutes. Gregg Doyel, top of the hour. It's Big O Tire Sports Center update time.
This Sports Center update on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan is presented by Big O Tires, the team you trust.
It's an off day for the Colts. They'll get back to practice tomorrow. Xavier Rhodes, the big injury to watch. Originally, the Colts thought he wouldn't be out much at all, really, and obviously missed all of last week, including the season opener. Calf injuries can be kind of a weird thing. I know Michael Gallup for the Cowboys suffered a calf injury. He missed 3 to 5 weeks. The fact they didn't put Rhodes on IR, I think, is an encouraging sign, but still, we'll have to monitor his status. After reviewing the film yesterday, Frank Reich on the play of his quarterback in Week 1.
I thought he looked poised, under control. There were a couple pre-snap things that we need to clean up that we've talked about, but, a lot of positive things. Protecting the football, Gregg, that was another big deal, right? I mean, protecting the football. We did have the fumble snap, but, really just on that quarterback sneak on that 4th down. But in the pocket, he was good, and obviously not throwing any interceptions was good.
On the questions list for me entering Week 1, Jimmy, in some order, it was Julian Davenport at left tackle. It was what type of Carson Wentz would you get, and it was what type of Rock Ya-Sin would you get. Drew asked about Rock. Yeah, I thought Rock played pretty well. Honestly, I didn't think he was a big issue for you at that outside corner. And Carson, I thought, played enough winning football to make that game a little bit closer. But certainly the left tackle play and just in general the O-line, ugly.
Look, we talked about a little bit earlier how we were impressed at Carson Wentz's resolve with all the hits that he took. I don't want that week to week, man. Like, it's great that he got up Week 1, but if that continues and that's the beating he's going to take week over week this season, he's not going to stay healthy very long.
Yeah, and Matt mentioned here that stop the 40-yard low probability throws down the field. Matt, find me those throws that Carson Wentz attempted. Carson Wentz, I think, had one of the lowest attempted yards per route in the NFL in Week 1. I mean, that was dink and dunk central there, and your O-line has got to hold up for a little bit longer. I did not think that all of a sudden this is Carson Wentz holding on to it for 5 seconds, and that's leading to a bunch of hits.
Well, at least we know why they paid Nyheim Hines now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going to be dink and dunking.
You got to have somebody for the dink and dunk, KB.
Hoping to have Nyheim Hines on the show tomorrow, so hopefully we'll hear him, and we'll talk a little bit more about his contract and that extension.
Which, by the way,
later on,
thrilled for him. I mean, that's more of a joke at Carson Wentz, but in terms of the running back core of the Colts, you and I have been high on it from the get-go. Still one of the best in the league, and looking forward to continuing to seeing that grow as the season goes on.
Agreed. And I thought the run blocking wasn't as good as it could have been for that group on Sunday. All right, Ravens and Raiders last night, Monday Night Football. A whole lot of Peyton and Eli chatter there on ESPN2. It was a great game. Raiders come back, win in overtime in a thriller, 33-27. You had 5 scores in the fourth quarter. The Ravens had won 98 straight games, and they had a 14-point lead or more. And, Jimmy, your AFC West undefeated in Week 1.
Yeah, like, I was kind of, as a Chiefs fan, I was rooting against the Raiders for most of that game just because. And it would have been funny to see Gruden and the Raiders implode like they almost did. You have everybody come out, celebrate like the game is won. They end up being short of the goal line. Carr threw a pick that really wasn't his fault. Ravens have a chance to where I think, all right, it's going to be a Tucker field goal. It's automatic. Lamar gets sacked. They fumble, and then just all pressure by the Ravens the rest of the way, and Carr makes him pay with a deep shot. It was a fun game.
College football this weekend, I believe I saw College Game Days in Happy Valley for Auburn at Penn State, which is that's kind of just an interesting game. You don't see many SEC teams travel to take on Big Ten teams on the road. In Bloomington, it'll be IU Cincinnati at noon. You guys mentioned, you and Scotty, the line about 3.5 for the Bearcats.
About where it's been hovering.
You got an early hunch there?
My wife's listening, so I'm going to scoop the 3. I'm going to take the Hoosiers. She's the biggest football fan of IU that I know.
Wow, I love that.
And I am going to scoop IU. I think this is another early season test for Tom Allen in terms of where this program is. A lot of hype for them. You need a strong performance. You need a win, but if you lose close, just anything better than that Iowa game. Show that you're as good as you think you are.
Yeah, I think you need a win, or else it's a season that's just hovering close to 500.
Probably.
And you know, that next step for it to be taken, Dan and I talked about this a few weeks ago. You got 2 chances in September, Iowa, and now this one. And this, obviously, the opportunity after laying the egg in Iowa City. Clay Helton fired a 46-24 record for the USC head coach. He gets the axe. So
I like
USC gets... When you're a 17.5-point underdog, Jimmy, and you lose by 29 at home, and you're already on the hot seat,
It's tough.
that's not good. All right, we come back on the Fan Morning Show. Mike Wells from ESPN.com going to join us. Gregg Doyel at the top of the hour. It'll be Wellesley with Kevin Bowen. Jimmy Cook, we come back here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
team who finished number one in total defense last season in the LA Rams coming in town this weekend.
Mike Wells joins us, ESPN.com, here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Wells, do you have to keep the emergency flashers going? I would think, being a member of the school board, you can just drop the kids off in your own parking spot and move on.
Well, no, actually, I got the blinker on. It's a long light on this street that I got to turn on to head towards school. So I am a very safe driver, and I tell you, if I had my daughter in the car, it'd be fine. But because she's more like me, my son is a Mr. Goody Two Shoe. So he would snitch on me if I didn't have the blinker on, or if I was driving and texting, or if I was holding my phone and talking. Luckily, I got my headphones in, so I got to be on my best behavior with my man Tay in the car because he will rat me out.
Father of the Year, Mike Wells, joined us here on the Fan Morning Show. Wells, more disappointed in the play of the defense from Sunday or the offensive line?
God. It honestly can be. It's a toss-up, especially when you look at the key players on the defense who struggled. Darius Leonard did not have a good game. He played very well. I mean, Bobby Okereke got thrown to the side. Bobby Okereke got he was like the little man, like Michael Grady getting thrown in the locker at Warren Central back in the day by the Seahawks tight end on that play where he just shoved him to the ground.
Take a shot at Grady when he can't even defend himself.
Oh, KB, you're the king of that, man. I got people texting me talking about you got to take a shot at me on the air. So I'm taking a page out of the Kevin Bowen book. I'm hitting and running right now. That's what I'm doing. But you got Julian Blackman and Corey Willis not playing well. It was a struggle. So I'm saying it was even. Both units really, really played bad, in my opinion.
Is there a concern, Wells, of like one of those will continue? Because normally the defense and the ability not to give up big plays is a strength, and normally the offensive line is a strength. Do you have concerns that either of those can continue or will continue, I should say?
I think I believe there's a better chance of the offensive line playing better this weekend than the defense. I think the defense, for some odd reason, they tend to get off to slow starts. They can't play a complete game. I know they're going to have a struggle. They're going to struggle to stop Aaron Donald and stuff, but I have more faith in the O-line playing better than the defense this weekend.
Mike, how do you feel about the fact that I saw the early line at 4 and I hammered that and laid the 4 on the Rams going into this?
You know what, Jimmy, man? I got to give you props, man. First of all, you sound great on the air. I mean, normally you're in the producer's role. You're sounding great on the air in this co-hosted role.
Thank you, Mike.
But what
did you send to Wells? Did you get him on this golf course today?
I pulled some strings.
No, this is the first time I've heard Jimmy on the air, so I got to give him his props. So props for Jimmy on this one. But no, hey, smart man in the betting, and I'm not a bettor. I'm a cheapskate artist, but I think that's a smart bet by you, Jimmy.
Also, to clarify, Wells, I've never taken a sideswipe at you. I just want that to be known, just so it's a mutual level of respect here.
Need some chapstick for all that kissing you're doing?
See, hey,
you two gonna stay at the Conrad tonight?
Oh my goodness! Hey, hold on. Hey, have a good day at school, buddy. All right, love you. Stay out of trouble, man. All right, I don't want people on the air to realize that you get in trouble, man. Okay? Hey, he just gave me the stink eye, fellas. He'd probably try to beat my butt if he was bigger.
What's he getting in trouble for?
Nah, hey, I call him. He's like the mini version of Eddie Haskell. All the teachers love him, but he's one of those sly kids, man. He's one of those sly. He knows when to say things and stuff. So
sounds like his dad.
Oh yeah, I mean, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, fellas. But no, he's a good kid. But and the reality is, I mean, we talked about this, KB, last week. The start of the schedule is brutal for the Colts. What's disappointing is that game was not as close as the final score, in my opinion, last week. I don't feel like truly once the Colts fell on that 4th and 1, that was their last chance to win that game, in my opinion. I just don't feel like they really, really, truly threatened the Seahawks. Russell Wilson had all day in the pocket to do whatever he wanted. There was no pressure on him. It was an easy game for Russell Wilson to pick apart that defense.
Mike Wells from ESPN.com here on the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen and Jimmy Cook. Wells, I know you love the YouTube chat when you were in here last week, so we'll go there for the next question. Brian says, a few years ago, Frank Reich was talked about as a weapon. his at-the-time creative play calling. Now he seems to be more of a liability. Seems like there's no creativity. Am I missing something? So just thoughts on the play calling / fourth down decisions from Frank Reich on Sunday.
You know, I gotta say, I'm not saying Frank Reich's not a bad. I'm not saying he is a horrible play caller, but he does bring into question. I think that right there put in what he did on that one play on Sunday really put into perspective. All right, Frank, why are you trying to I felt like Frank was trying to outsmart himself. He's a confident play caller, but I felt like he was trying to say, I'm the smartest man in the room. But it blew up in their face. I mean, take the 3 points and you're down by 8. You take 3, you're down by 8, and a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. That's all you need. But instead, Frank decided to try to be cute instead of taking a safe bet on things. And that's why fans question what type of play caller Frank Reich is when he does stuff like that.
Man, Carson Wentz took some hits, Wells. I mean, that was Jacoby Brissett 2017 hits.
Yeah, and Andrew Luck Andrew Luck type hits. I mean, you can't have that happen. Hit 10 times. I mean, I know Phillip Rivers is not as mobile and he gets rid of the ball quicker, and the most he got hit in the game was 5 times last season. But think about it. There's 16 more games. 16 more games, and Carson Wentz takes 10 hits already in his first game, along with the 3 sacks. I mean, 13 hits in his first game. He's already a guy. He's already a quarterback who was taking a pounding as it is with the 50 sacks and who knows how many quarterback hits he had last year. It has to get fixed, and it has to get fixed quick in order for Wentz. Before you know it, he's gonna be showing up on the injury report with this little ding, that little ding, and little dings add up to big dings after a while.
You know, I asked Frank Reich there late in that press conference yesterday, like, how did Carson come out of the game? Because I'm just thinking to myself, and Frank said some vicious hits, and then Frank was like, oh, he came out okay, he's fine, whatnot, and that's part of playing quarterback, and sometimes it's not a bad thing to take those hits and kind of get into the game. I'm thinking to myself, boy, if those are the hits in week 1 and they for some reason continue, we're going to see a whole lot of Jacob Eason this year. You might be getting your first-round pick back.
And here's the thing, KB and Jimmy. One of the reasons why it was a good thing for Carson Wentz to come here, it was because he was supposed to be able to have a clean pocket to work with.
Right.
And instead, he's laying on his backside, getting pounded over and over again. That's not a good thing.
Mike, do you buy Frank saying that some of the blame belongs on the pre-snap capabilities of Wentz, or was the performance as a whole so bad that that's not plausible to you?
You know what? That's a great question, Jimmy. I still have to watch the replay of the game, but the blame all around goes everywhere. So I'm not going to put it just on the O-line. There were probably a couple times that Carson could have got rid of the ball quicker, but all in all, Carson Wentz was not the biggest problem for the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. He was not the biggest problem in his first game. There were bigger issues the Colts had to deal with than Carson Wentz in his first game starting for Indianapolis.
Before we let you go, Wells, does Eric Fisher play on Sunday?
I mean, for the Colts' sake, here, put it like this: for the Colts' sake, they need him to play. For the Mike Wells' sake, I need him to stay out one more week.
Does he play? Does he play?
And for those who don't know, KB and I have a friendly bet. That Eric Fisher. KB wins the bet if Fisher plays this week. I win if he plays at Tennessee. So selfishly, I need him to play against Tennessee because I'm 0 for 2 in bets against KB. But for the Colts, they need him to. And KB, unfortunately, I think I'm about to fall 0-3 against you in betting, man.
Well, that is music to my ears. The Colts will get back to practice tomorrow, and Wells will be there after his 18 holes today. Wells, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, kids. All right, talk to you guys later.
That's Mike Wells right there from ESPN.com. We'll have Gregg Doyel in about 15 minutes. We come back on the Fan Morning Show. Jimmy and I haven't really talked at all about Nyheim Hines and that contract extension that he got. What was that, Friday or Saturday, Jimmy?
Yeah, over the weekend.
Late, yeah, it was late. Hopefully have Nyheim Hines on tomorrow. But we'll hit on that. We come back, and then Gregg Doyel at the top of the hour. Kevin Bowe and Jimmy Cook on the Fan.
To the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Welcome back to the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, Jimmy Cook. He'll be in tomorrow as well. We'll have Greg Doyel in about 10 minutes. And boy, that pop quiz, Jimmy, after yesterday's perfect effort by Tom, woohoo, Scotty J, he's not messing around.
I'm going to keep hitting my hits, and it is my teams. Imagine Aroldis Chapman, if you're a baseball fan, doesn't have it like he's had most of the year, but then suddenly he finds it and you're getting 105 and 105 and 104 and then a nice splitter at like 95. That is this quiz today. It is bringing out all the stops.
See, I thought you were just going to say Aroldis Chapman throwing at your head.
That's fine, too.
I think that's what this quiz is. I
want them to die like dogs.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you, Rake. Thank you, Mark Dykton. Yes, that is exactly Scotty's approach to this pop quiz. We'll have that.
Man, he actually, that's awesome.
9:30.
Because I know you referenced that earlier when I was going after that. What was that about? What was the context?
He wants the San Diego Padres.
In a normal scenario, I would love to see the Padres do well. I want them to die like dogs.
That's amazing.
Rake. Like Rake. Have you ever heard Rake say anything?
I love Gregg
like
Rakestraw so much.
Oh, just epic as that. Unfortunately, the Reds have died like dogs along with the Padres over the past few weeks. Want to touch on Nyheim Hines and that contract extension, but James is on line too. Let's get to James. James, welcome to the Fan Morning Show.
Hey, thank you. By the way, Kevin, good job on the morning show, man. You've been really doing a great job there. So, and everybody else is helping out there. So,
thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. You know, before you remember me before the season, I said the same thing. I said we haven't got no more receiver, and we can't take the top off the defense. Guess what happens Sunday? And then, they don't look like they're planning on scoring 28 points a game or more as an offense. They look like you do what you do, and we'll try to do what we do, and we hope it all works out. And number three, you can't have such a conservative game plan and then roll the dice like you're a major gambler on fourth down. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Jimmy, I've been very high on Michael Pittman. I think he's going to have a great season, and I am a little bit concerned about just the wideouts and their ability to create separation. I tend to think you didn't take enough chances. I tend to think your offensive line didn't provide the ability to really hit on many chunks. But to James's point, you know, it's a fair question to be asked of, like, can Michael Pittman take the jump? Because that was a question. I mean, that was the expectation, I think, this year. You know, Pascal, really good number 2, preferably probably number 3. Paris Campbell, more of that slot kind of gadgety guy. And T.Y. Hilton, we just don't think he's still at that top level. So Pittman needs to take the jump. I think he will, but week 1 does have me just, oh boy, I need to see more of that.
Well, this, again, falls into the category of objects that could have been a little bit more clear had there been more reps and consistency across the entirety of the preseason. I know that wasn't as big a deal with the receivers as much as it was with Wentz.
Objects in your mirror are closer than they appear. I thought you were going to go there on me.
It's not my playbook. Okay. But that is a good one, though.
That was my. You can tell I'm the son of a driver's ed teacher, but
no. But I mean, like, it goes back to Wentz's availability, and that wasn't necessarily Carson's fault for the most part. But you're in this situation now where all of your live reps are occurring as the regular season unfolds. So we have one game bodies of work of a situation where, again, the O-line was pitiful. Wentz really didn't have a ton of time throughout the day, and when he did, it was safe routes. There weren't chances that were taken. I think you and I are both in that same camp. We want to see more chances. We want to see what these receivers can do and what Wentz can do, just something that wasn't present week 1. And it sucks because that's all you have to go off of right now. I am also in the same headspace as you. I think it's going to be a great year for Michael Pittman on the whole, but a receiver can only be as good as his quarterback allows him to be. And if those chances aren't there, then...
And his offensive line.
Yeah, that too.
To be fair, too. And
I'm not trying to take swipes at Wentz because you don't know. You don't know with the amount of time that he actually had to let things develop if it's an issue with him or if it's an issue with the O-line. Week 1, O-line is where I'm placing the blame.
We saw it late Friday. Nyheim Hines, 3 years, $18.6 million. Again, hoping to have Nyheim on the show tomorrow. Jimmy, it is super, super rare to see a day 3 drafted running back. Nyheim Hines was a 4th-round pick back in 2018. Sign a multi-year extension, let alone 3 years, before the end of his rookie deal. so rare. So credit to Nyheim Hines, a guy that, man, you think back to that debut for him in that 2018 preseason. First off, he's wearing 42, so he looks like, he's Friday Night Lights JV player and not Boobie Miles. He can't fill the punt. He's struggling. There are talks of, do you cut Nyheim Hines? I always thought that was kind of a ludicrous thing, but still, I mean, there was chatter of that, and now here he is, yet to miss a game in the NFL, yet to miss a regular season practice. And when you preach as much about the run game and wanting to be versatile and multiple, that's where I think this extension. I don't love paying running backs great money, but I think this extension's fine.
You hear people across the board, particularly so in our market here, plead for playmakers to be available for your roster. Nyheim Hines is exactly that. He hit career highs in almost every category you'd want to see from a running back and a pass-catching back at that last year. This stat from Colts.com, one of 34 players in NFL history to have multiple seasons of 300-plus rushing yards, 400-plus receiving yards, and 60-plus receptions, and he's done that twice in his tenure here as a Colt.
And helps you out as a punt returner.
Exactly. I think the value there, KB, that's the biggest thing. The money there that's used for that extension, that is a fine price to hang on to for the foreseeable future, a versatile playmaker like Nyheim Hines.
Today's NFL is, I know he doesn't like the gadget guy reference. To me, it's a compliment. Like, that means you do a lot of things really well. And I thought him as an in-between-the-tackle guy took a stride last year. And he should be proud, because if you look at that 2018 draft class, I think he was the 9th or 10th running back selected that year. Like we said, 4th-round pick. And besides Nick Chubb, he's the only one to get to that second contract. I mean, that's big time, because teams just don't usually pay that position. And now you have a duo of him and Jonathan Taylor for at least the next 3 years. When you preach as much, and this goes back to the offensive line standard that we have to hold them to. The Colts have invested so much in the O-line. We hold them to a high standard, rightfully so. When you preach, run game, you aren't 100% sure if Carson Wentz is a definite answer. You obviously hope that he is. You got to support him. And I think a duo of Taylor and Hines moving forward is very, very supportive on that front. He's Jimmy Cook. I'm Kevin Bowen. When we come back on the Fan Morning Show, Gregg Doyel from the Indianapolis Star going to join us. Again, we got a brutal pop quiz. I saw Doyel just had a tweet here. Yeah, about to go on with K Bowen 1070 to discuss Colts and why some folks would rather I not write the truth. That's at 9 a.m. Here's the truth. Just peak Gregg Doyel right there. Just his own self-tease.
Good to talk to you too, Gregg.
Gregg Doyel going to join us next here with Jimmy Cook and Kevin Bowen of the Fan Morning Show.
The Colts will wave the white flag, and that'll do it.
taught me to read. True story. Taught me to read because I was bugging him so much about the Oklahoma Sooners. How'd they do yesterday? What's going on with them? So on Sunday mornings, he would teach me to read the damn paper so I could read about the Sooners myself. I was 5 years old. So when you learn how to read by reading the Sunday Oklahoman, you're going to be a sports writer. But by the way, you said, a lot of people are missing Gregg or whatever. You know who's missing me? The strong people, the tough people, the people with courage.
The alphas, I think you refer to them as.
The alphas are missing me because it's the betas out there. You should see my Twitter feed, Kevin. It's not pretty. It's people complaining to me or about me, but they're adding me so I see it. Oh, I'm going to make them see it because I'm a tough guy. And they all want everybody to know, Gregg's so mean. Does this guy ever write anything nice? Which is, first of all, a joke because, as Kevin, as you know, nobody writes more schlock than me. I write more. I am the Tom Rinaldi of Indianapolis sports writing. I've written more of those than any 10 people ever have. But does he ever write anything nice about the Colts? Yeah, when they don't suck, I do. But when they suck, I write they suck. And the strong, the alphas out there get it. It's the betas that are like, why do you write mean stuff? I don't know, beta. Go cry to your mom, okay?
He's Gregg Doyel from the Indianapolis Star here on the Fan Morning Show. You referenced this tweet just a few minutes ago, Gregg, that there are folks out there that would rather you not write the truth. You said the truth is this. Cocky Colts got their comeuppance against Seattle on Sunday. Coach Frank Reich hopes they got the message too. Cocky Colts?
I don't want to put you on the spot, okay? I'm not going to ask you if you agree with it. I'm not going to ask you a damn thing. What I'm going to tell you is that, and you know this, but everybody should know this, Frank Reich is not just a pastor, but he's a professional speaker. Google Frank Reich. You can get him to speak at your corporate party for $25,000 or whatever he charges. I mean, and the guy's gifted at speaking. Okay, Chuck Pagano was great at cliches, and he was a fun speaker. Chuck's the guy that you want at your backyard barbecue because he's going to make everybody laugh and giggle as we're holding our slits. Frank Reich's the guy that you want talking to 10,000 people because he will say every word just right. When he says yesterday that he wants his team humble, and he told his team this, he had two messages, and one of them was about being, frustration fuels focus. Okay, great. I love alliteration as much as the next guy. But his other one was hungry and humble. Of course, that's alliteration too. Hungry and humble. And then he told us he wants them hungry and humble. And after they ate humble pie against Seattle, he wants them blah, blah, blah. That's his way of saying we were full of ourselves. And you saw what happened, and I want us to be hungry but humble because this team hadn't been humble. And people don't want to read that. It's weird. They like to read Darius Leonard say, I'm going to get 200 tackles, 10 sacks, 10 picks. I'm going to be the defensive player of the year. I'm going to be the best linebacker of all time. They want to read that. But when he has 5 tackles and not one of them until the last play of the first half just about, when he misses a tackle line of scrimmage and chases the guy down finally, they don't want to read about that. They just want to read about how great he is. They don't want to read about what he actually did. And I don't understand that about fans. And it's just some fans. It's the beta fans. I don't understand them. There's a reason nobody likes beta fish. They're weak and wimpy.
Greg, I'm kind of torn on and you didn't ask me for my opinion, but I'm going to give it. I don't know if I'm going full in on the Colts were too cocky and whatever week one. We want, and when I say we, you and I, we want athletes to speak their minds. We want coaches to speak their minds. Be candid. Don't be cliche. So when Darius Leonard does express his goals, or DeForest Buckner says, I have a goal to be Defensive Player of the Year, and then when they don't achieve that, to me, it's like low-hanging fruit in just trying to rip them. I think it's totally fine in sitting here and saying Darius Leonard did not play like a $100 million linebacker in week one. That is perfectly fine. But I continue to get torn of like, when these guys are just expressing their individual goals for the season, is that just low-hanging fruit to attack that and call it, oh my gosh, it was cocky?
It would have been Sunday, and I didn't do it Sunday. You know when I did it? I did it Monday when Frank Reich himself said he wants his team humble. When Frank Reich himself says humble and hungry and makes it a point to tell his team he wants them humble and hungry, at that point, that low-hanging fruit becomes the story. And one thing that I do, and, here I'm about to pull a Darius Leonard and brag on myself, but one thing I do is when I hear a press conference or conference call or whatever, I generally pick out what's happening, what exactly they're saying. A lot of folks go into these things with, I'm going to write this story, and I'm going to ask this question, I'm going to write this story, and I'm not really going to hear anything else he says because I'm writing about this. I go in there, and it's lucky I got this great job where I can do the big picture. I just listen. And here's what they said. And, wow, I'll be damned. He just said he wants his team humble and hungry because after watching that game and after watching the humble pie they eat that he mentioned, again, this isn't just some guy talking. This is Frank Reich, gifted public speaker. He's sending a message. And I heard the message. People don't want to hear the message. They don't want me to write the message. And it's not. So your low-hanging fruit comment, very fair had I written that Sunday night. I don't think that's fair having written it after what Frank Reich said.
Gregg Doyel joining us of the Indianapolis Star. You can follow him on Twitter at Gregg Doyel Star. Gregg, in terms of your evaluation of Carson Wentz, given the struggles of the O-line, how many games into his Colts tenure will it take for you to feel like you have a comfortable evaluation of what this season's going to hold?
Oh, boy. Well, as it relates to Carson Wentz, one game in, I'm comfortable with he's good enough. One game in. Because if you were going to list, and yeah, he had that fumble on the snap. I get that. You know, lightning strikes sometimes. And it's not nice when it lands somewhere, but it's a fluke. Carson Wentz, if we're going to list the 10 biggest reasons the Colts lost that game, he's not one of the 10. Now, the fumble was. Okay, that was not good. But as far as overall play, schemes, play calls, players not performing up to their ability, whatever, he's not on the list. He only had 3 practices. So if he was that good after you know what he's gone through this preseason, I'm comfortable with him and saying that the Colts will be okay with him. Now, but you're asking also about the offensive line and everything else around it. And I don't know. We need to see Eric Fisher. You know, and Eric Fisher, and he might be really the left tackle they picked up from the Chiefs in the offseason. He might be the answer left tackle, but the Colts obviously think he will be. And he was Pro Bowl not long ago, maybe even last year. I'm not quite sure about that, but he's been good. But he's also 30-31. He's coming off an Achilles. They hadn't practiced much because of COVID. So it's not like they're plugging in Anthony Munoz in his prime. You know, they're plugging in an old guy coming off an Achilles and with no training at all on a team he's never played with before, and you need continuity and chemistry on the line. So I'm not saying Eric Fisher won't work at all. I'm not saying that. But I am saying if people think, oh, good, when Eric Fisher comes back, it'll all be fine, that's not exactly how the way it's going to work out. And Braden Smith has a foot issue. And I asked Reich specifically yesterday, is that foot issue, it's not the same thing as Quentin and Carson Wentz had, is it? And he said, no, it's not. It's different, but they're going to monitor it for a couple of days. So, you know, I wouldn't rule out amputation at this point.
The one and only Gregg Doyel joins us here on the Fan Morning Show. Gregg, I want to shift gears a little bit to Saturday, and I can't recall the last time we've had kind of 2 games for Indiana and Purdue that carry the weight of these 2 games. And I know for Indiana, it's probably a little bit bigger considering what happened in Iowa City, and it's a top 10 team in your backyard. But all of a sudden, Purdue, I mean, this is a bit of a measuring stick game against a Notre Dame team that certainly has flaws 2 games into the season. What are your thoughts on what faces Tom Allen and Jeff Brom on Saturday?
Well, first of all, how about, you know, we all went into this season thinking great thoughts about IU and hoping great thoughts about the Colts. And by we all, I mean, you know, the community, the state. That's where they, you know, IU is top 10 and the Colts everybody hopes is really good. And then both of them laid a similar sized egg in the first week. That's, you know, that's a big whoopee cushion of a noise. That stinks. But they have a season, you know, they have 10, 12, 15 more games to get us excited again. So your question specifically, I'll answer it this way. My calendar, I have a desk calendar, you know, it's like 2 feet by 3 feet. It's on my kitchen table, my dining room table, and I'm old school like that. So I've had the IU-UC game on my calendar with yellow highlighter, like I'm covering that game for a month. You know, that's the game I'm covering. And I thought I was covering it this weekend. And one of my bosses who actually went to IU, and, you know, people call us the IU Star, and I get that. Back in the day, back before I got here, you know, we had people that just covered IU. We had columnists writing about only IU. You know, I've helped change that. But if people still want to call us the IU Star, go for it. But our college sports editor went to IU, called me the other day and said, "Are you sure you want to do the IU-UC game? Because Purdue Notre Dame's probably bigger." And honestly, I hadn't thought about that. Just because I've had IU in yellow. Once I put you in yellow for us at Penn, it's over. I'm not thinking about you anymore. That's the game I'm covering. But he's right. Purdue's 2-0, and their quarterbacks look great. And they haven't played anybody, but so what? They're 2-0, and Oregon State's not bad. Notre Dame has barely won twice. Notre Dame doesn't look terribly good. Purdue can win this game, and maybe Purdue's really good. You know, this is a great measuring stick for Purdue, not a bad measuring stick for Notre Dame. And given that both teams are in the state, obviously, maybe that is bigger than IU versus number 7 UC, which is crazy to say. So anyway, I'm covering the Purdue game. Really? So the IU Stars covering the Purdue game, despite the fact that I assumed I was covering IU myself. So not that we've given up on IU. I'm just saying you got to make a choice. And we made the choice that Purdue's a bigger game. And once that was pointed out to me, and I took the yellow highlighter out of my brain and thought about it, I thought, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm glad I'm doing that game.
Wow, that's going to quiet the old narrative I see in your mentions a lot about only writing about IU.
No, it won't. No, it won't. See, that's the great thing about narratives and tweets and whatever is that people they don't know once you make. Unlike me, well, sort of like me, I guess. I put the highlighter and I made up my mind on the IU game. Someone had to tell me otherwise. Once people make up their mind about something as seriously important as the IU star, it's over. It's over. They check that box and they move on. Once they make up their mind that Gregg Doyel's mean to the Colts, it doesn't matter if they got embarrassed by whoever. They're right. I'm mean to the Colts, and the beta fish go off and go swim away until someone gobbles you up, and that's your problem, not mine. But no, this won't change the narrative because people don't change, and I'm trying to get used to it, but it's tough.
Gregg Doyel knocking on the door of 100,000 followers on Twitter. You can hit him.
No.
Did you fall? Did you fall? You were through the door. Now you fell back. I'm sorry. I'm just going off the numbers I see.
I was through the door in the house, sitting comfortably on my couch, watching TV when President Trump got elected, to be honest with you. And then just because we were writing what was happening and we're writing about players kneeling and
I apologize, Greg. I apologize. That's my bad. I did not know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like a lot of people in the media, a lot of us, we've been shedding followers left and right, and I shed them pretty quickly when I write the truth, because the betas can't handle it. When I write that COVID's serious back in March of 2020, hey everybody, this COVID thing, it might be serious. We might want to wear masks. Everybody unfollows me because they don't want, like I say, like I've been saying for 10 minutes, they can't hear the truth. Don't tell them the truth. Tell them the Colts are really good. Tell them that COVID doesn't matter in March of 2020, and then tell them that it's safe to go to all these games with no masks on in fall of 2020 because that's safe. Because what could possibly? It's not like 1 million people are going to die. That would never happen, Jimmy.
So, Greg, I'm going to be at Notre Dame on Saturday, and I was curious if I should be worried about Purdue. I'm a big Irish fan, and I am kind of worried with the struggles they have on the O-line.
For sure. You should be. Now, listen, Notre Dame recruits Notre Dame athletes, and Brian Kelly's a proven coach, and Jeff Brom's good, obviously. But Notre Dame and Purdue's been recruiting pretty good athletes too. But in a vacuum, Notre Dame should win by 3 touchdowns. I mean, you're Notre Dame. You've been recruiting this way for 10 years. You should win by 3 TDs when Purdue comes to your building, especially a Purdue team that's been struggling for the last 2 or 3 years. However, so if that happens, that happens. But, yeah, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'm not comfortable at all. You look at the quarterbacks Purdue had. The thing about Brom, and here's a narrative that and Bowen and I were talking about this last week, is that, heck, maybe, Kevin, you were guilty of this. I forget. I forget most of the things that I say. I forget everything you say. But I think that you were saying that, I think you were saying that the quarterbacks at Purdue, somebody was saying they're a problem, and I was saying, no, they're not the problem. They got other problems. They're not the problem. Well, look at their quarterback's numbers. Look at, for the year, it doesn't matter who Brom puts in there. He could put me in there.
That was me saying that, by the way.
It was you, okay?
And it was, to be fair, there's a lot of problems, mainly on the defense, the O-line for sure. But it's been surprising to me, considering the quarterback carousel in college football, that Purdue has not gotten via transfer or recruiting a higher level quarterback.
Now, and I told you, and I thought that, see, don't check that. Don't be me with your yellow highlighter. Listen to me and take this and go, oh, yeah, you're right. What I told you is if you're a high-level transfer, you're going to have a whole lot of options. And, yes, Jeff Brom is someone to entrust with your ability to throw. David Blau's in the NFL, so it proves that. But if you're a high-level transfer, you want to go somewhere where you can actually be the missing piece to something special. And you're going to have 10 or 15 schools that might look that way. Purdue, as of right now, hasn't looked that way yet. So if you're Jack Cohn of Wisconsin, where are you going to go? Notre Dame or Purdue? I mean, it's a no-brainer. I love Purdue. I love Jeff Brom. I'm not the IU star guy. Heck, I love all of our schools, to be honest with you. I want them all to win. But if I'm a quarterback, I'm not going to Purdue. I'm going to Notre Dame or somewhere else.
Speaking of Notre Dame, and Gregg Doyel from the Star joins us here on the Fan Morning Show. You got a head coach candidate for USC?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's Urban Meyer. That fake, that phony, that fraud. Because we saw what happened with the Jaguars. We saw them get their rear ends kicked by a Houston team starting, I don't know, me at quarterback. I mean, they got their asses handed to them, if I can say that word, handed to them.
Yes. By
a Texans team in turmoil. Urban's going to fail at Jacksonville, and it won't even be his fault. He's going to fail because Jacksonville is they're the Jets. They're the Jets of the Florida swamp. So he'll fail there. He'll get the message there, much like Bobby Petrino bailed on Atlanta, because Bobby Petrino, they're similar snakes. Snakes bail. When the thunder and lightning starts crashing around, snakes bail. He'll bail. He'll be the coach at USC by, December 15th.
Gregg Doyel, before we let you go, I know your viewing schedule isn't always on sports at night, but did you catch any of Peyton and Eli last night on the ESPN2 telecast?
Oh, you do listen to me. No. Yeah, I watched last night. I watched actually when you called, because I taped SportsCenter on my Hulu Live because Hulu Live has sports. Where's my shirt that I wear that? And I watch ESPN SportsCenter in the morning. So I was watching the highlights of them and was thinking, why is Charles Barkley here? Why is Ray Lewis here? Why is Russell Wilson here? Like, I want to hear Peyton and Eli talking. I don't want to hear, good Lord, why is Travis Kelce here? And why are his arms crossed? Talk about bad body language. Travis, are you nervous?
What do you got against Travis Kelce? Come on now.
His arms are crossed like he's nervous to be there. Like, I just want to hear Eli. You have Peyton and Eli on for the first time ever. So how about we water it down with other people? So anyway, I didn't sit up and watch that, but I'm watching it now. But I watched Madam Secretary last night. I'm on season 5, episode 16, 17. And last night there was a dog. And don't get me emotional, but last night there was a dog that was getting old and not going to make it. And so last night was a tearful night for me.
Gotcha. Well, I think here in Indy, maybe some people were crying watching Peyton, 2 totally different scenarios, but anytime Peyton's on the TV, it stirs up some emotions here in Indianapolis. The one and only Gregg Doyel from the Star, like Jimmy said, approaching 100,000 followand again. I'm sure exactly what Gregg's ego needed to hear.
The road to redemption.
I'm approaching 98 is what I'm approaching. And by the way, okay, all you betas, watch out for the Cuppies out there because they're coming for you, baby.
Thank you, Gregg.
All right, bye, guys.
See you, Gregg.
That's Gregg Doyel right there from the Star, and as always, he has stirred up some conversation. And the one and only Gregg Doyel there. Urban Meyer to USC. Like, boy, that'd be wild. That seems like a popular name right now, Jimmy, is James Franklin from Penn State.
Man.
Is USC, like, top?
Yes. Yeah.
Top they're 5 job?
The only, like, maybe plaguing mark you'd say is it's the Pac-12. And, like, the Pac-12, I feel like, is always kind of viewed as just kind of out there. Like, it's not in the same pretense as the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah, that's why Oregon's win was so big on Saturday.
Correct.
Congrats to Mark
but,
again.
But that being said, big picture, in terms of history and lore, USC is a top program, a top job. Are they a top job in the modern college football landscape? Not since 2005. Not since Pete Carroll left. I mean, somebody else is going to have to restore that back to that title.
Thought I heard during the telecast on Saturday that a Pac-12 team has not made the playoffs yet. Is that right? Has Oregon not made it? Do you know that, Scotty? Yeah, it just
that does sound right.
You know,
though.
We've got a Michigan
State
sighting. Right. We've got I don't know. There's been some one-offs in the playoff. Obviously, Notre Dame's had a couple appearances. But it just, that Pac-12 run, and the other stat people were saying is, I think of the top 5 preseason college football teams, 4 of the starting quarterbacks were from California. You think about that, and you're like, wait, what? How is USC, Oregon, UCLA for that? How are they not getting?
Pac-12's had 2 appearances.
Okay, when were those? I guess
Oregon in... It's not going to give me the years. Oregon and Washington both have had appearances.
Washington made the playoff?
If I'm reading this right, college football playoff, appearances by conference, 8 for the SEC, 8 for the ACC, 5 for the Big Ten, 4 for the Big 12, 2 for the Pac-12, and 1 for the independent. Shout out Irish, even though you got slaughtered.
Gosh, I totally forget about that Washington playoff appearance.
Irish once as independent, once as the ACC. They designated the ACC last year, so they were part of the conference technically. So
Got it. Okay, yeah, now that you're saying, I'm seeing it now. Last 4 years, none. Washington made it in 17, and then Oregon in the first year. So, yeah, the Pac-12 certainly needs an injection. I think it's good for college football. The more that USC, and I say that as a Notre Dame fan. But all right, Big O Tire Sports Center update time here on the Fan.
The Sports Center update on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan is presented by Big O Tires, the team you trust.
As Gregg Doyel mentioned, Braden Smith has a foot injury. It's not that foot injury where he's got a piece of a bone that needs to be removed. We'll get more clarity on that tomorrow, it sounds like. But Braden Foot injured his foot despite playing the entire game on Sunday against the Seahawks. The other big injury news, obviously, to watch, we'll see if Eric Fisher gets to be a full participant in practice. I think if he gets there and does it for multiple days, I think he plays on Sunday against the Rams.
I said it yesterday. Again, this is for smarter minds than me. Make sure, I'm sure they will, he checks every box. This is a dangerous injury to try to come back from, particularly as a member of the offensive line and at arguably the most position on the offensive line at left tackle. Just don't rush him back.
Jaden asked me on Twitter, he wanted me to throw this at you, Jimmy. How did Eric Fisher play for the Chiefs last season?
Eric Fisher was phenomenal last year. It was arguably his best season with the Chiefs. That dates back to 2013. Fisher's biggest issue early on in his career was getting comfortable in the position, and he would get beat early very, very often amongst the initial pressure in the trenches. But you look at his last 2 or 3 years, they were the prime years of his career. He really came along.
So you're saying an upgrade over Julian Davenport?
Yes. I mean, again, it's tough to say with the injury, but even with an injured Eric Fisher, I think he's still better based on what we saw on Sunday.
I was joking with that. I
know.
think, frankly, there'd be a lot of upgrades over Julian Davenport. Aaron Donald is the opponent this Sunday, and Frank Reich yesterday on defending, frankly, or blocking, I should say, one of the best defensive players, really, of all time.
I mean, I know he's a one-man show, but really that whole defense is an excellent defense. He's obviously the key, and Ramsey's a great player, and so on and so forth. But you got, last year they had number one defense in the NFL. It starts with Aaron Donald up front. So my experience is, especially with these guys and these players, is that kind of brings something about in you. Like, hey, I got to step up here. I got to rise to the occasion. I got to rise to the challenge.
It was kind of fitting, Jimmy. You've got the Hall of Fame rings for Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James being presented at halftime inside of Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday, and you have the rare NFL matchup of two guys that will go into Canton one day, in Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson. Like, it's rare to have two Hall of Famers, frankly, on the field. Now, last week, Bobby Wagner probably was one of them. But it's the fact that these two guys could literally be lined up across from each other. It'd be like, whatever, Jerry Rice against Charles Woodson, or, insert your wideout, kind of cornerback matchup here. There's going to be moments on Sunday where you're watching 56 and 99 going up against each other, and man, that doesn't happen very often. So as a fan, how cool is that?
You and I, yes, as objective, stepping away from it, football fans, that's insanely cool. Anytime you can get high-level matchups anywhere on the field is exciting. But if you're a Colts fan watching this, I worry you're going to be too fearful of what Wentz is going to do what Donald will do to Wentz if he gets his hands on him, versus being able to admire that matchup in the moment.
Fair, yes. But maybe for a second you can appreciate a couple nice one-on-one matchups between Quentin Nelson and Aaron Donald. Last night, a thriller on Monday Night Football, but more people in this market talking about Peyton and Eli. We'll give our thoughts a little bit later on that. Here was Peyton not happy with the NFL over how the sideline mics have grown a little bit louder and louder over the years.
It was one of my secrets, right? To watch the game, have the games recorded, and then be able to go back and listen to those, what Peyton calls Omaha, but it's not really going nowhere.
I mean, it was so unfair. They turned these sideline microphones up, and they're just giving you all our entire offense that we have worked so hard to protect.
And obviously that was Ray Lewis leading into that clip, but Peyton just had some really, and I thought the Ray Lewis combination was pretty good. I don't know about four guests throughout the game. I would frankly rather hear Peyton and Eli just go back and forth for a little bit longer, but I did enjoy Ray.
As somebody that watched pretty much the whole thing, except when I joined in, they had just brought in Barkley, so I missed the first couple bits with Eli and Peyton. Each guest
that was probably a good thing.
I know.
It was kind of a rocky start.
I heard it was, and that's why I tuned in, because all right, this is going to be a train wreck. It's going to be insightful.
Yeah.
You got a little bit of both. By the end of it, very insightful. But each guest that came on brought unique perspective to the table. And in particular, I didn't know there was a cool relationship between Peyton and Ray Lewis until Peyton's places, and he went to Baltimore. He sat down with Ray. There was great chemistry there. Having him on live TV and getting that interaction with two old rivals, but old friends at the same time, too. It was great.
And Eli had some pretty funny comments about facing Ray Lewis as well, saying Ray Lewis was telling him who the Mike linebacker was, and Eli had one of the worst games of his career against Ray Lewis as a rookie.
I like their back and forth with Peyton saying, I kept trying to recruit Ray to Indy, and he kept trying to get me to Baltimore, but Ed Reed being there, man, they roughed up their quarterbacks in practice. I wanted no part of going to Baltimore.
He also said he had a better chemistry with Ed Reed, throwing some picks to Ed Reed than he did Reggie Wayne. As far as the game, the Raiders came back and beat the Ravens 33-27 in OT. Just a wild finish there. 5 scores in the final quarter. Justin Tucker hits the go-ahead field goal from 47 yards with 37 seconds to go. Then the Raiders get into field goal range. Daniel Carlson good from 55 to force overtime. And Zay Jones scores the game winner there after the Raiders thought they had won at one point. Then they threw a pick in the end zone in OT. And then Lamar Jackson fumbles to give the Raiders one more shot at it, and they finish off a 14-point comeback.
People continue to be critical of Lamar Jackson year over year in certain moments, and it's moments like that. You have Justin Tucker on your team. Pretty much you get past the 50, you're fine. They were getting closer and closer to getting there. He gets lost scrambling, doesn't see pressure from behind, gets stripped, and then at that point, I mean, you are, if you're Harbaugh, you're sending all out blitzes left and right. Eventually you're going to get beat. They ran a nice little pick play, wide open, Zay Jones, touchdown, game over.
Gregg Doyel is going to be in South Bend on Saturday covering Purdue at Notre Dame. The Irish, a 7.5-point line. I'm guessing before the start of the year, Jimmy, that line was probably hovering closer to 2 touchdowns for this game. Xander Horvath, unfortunately, out for this game. The Mishawaka Marion product will not play against his hometown team. He hurt his foot against UConn. Notre Dame dropped 4 spots in the polls after their, whatever you want to call it, performance against Toledo. With the win on Saturday.
Thrilling.
Yeah, thrilling, thank you. Yes, as a biased Notre Dame fan chimes in. With the win on Saturday, Jimmy, Brian Kelly ties Newt Rockne for the most wins in Notre Dame program history. Kelly would be 104-39.
I think of all the teams I root for, there's few that I'm as knee-jerky about as Notre Dame. There's been times where I've called for Brian Kelly to be out of there. There's been other times when I get back to being sane and realize, you know what? I remember Charlie Weiss coaching the Irish, and considering they're still a contender year in and year out, although they're not as good as Alabama, I mean, who is? Or maybe Clemson for that matter. He is the best thing that's happened to the program since I've been alive. I couldn't be more happy for Brian Kelly, but I'm staying away from that bet, KB. I'll be able to bet in South Bend while I'm there because it's still in the state of Indiana, but that's a live bet for me. Purdue goes up early. Maybe I place it. Otherwise, that -7, I think the Boilers are going to keep it close.
I'm curious to see what that environment is like as well. Not a great crowd for Toledo, and you know a lot of Purdue fans that maybe were on the fence. They might nab some open market tickets right now. So I'm glad they're playing again as well. I know Notre Dame is going to play IU, way down the road, and, games that get announced 10 years in advance, but I like Notre Dame and Purdue playing each other in September. First time since 2014, I believe.
Yeah, and then they're going to take a little bit of time off after that. And I think sometime in the later end of this decade, they'll resume their annual series. I can't stress this enough, though. If you've never been to Notre Dame Stadium, the open market tickets are still pretty nice price-wise. Make a trip up there to South Bend. It's one of the best atmospheres in college football.
Some other ranking notes, the Big Ten-wise, Iowa at 5. They jump to number 5. Ohio State drops to number 9 from number 3. Penn State at 10. Wisconsin 18. And Michigan at 25. We talked about Clay Helton getting the axe yesterday. Jeff Smullian is on the board of trustees at USC here, so, maybe we can get a little insight.
We can cut the USC smack that I talked earlier, right? We can just get rid of that.
I've
right?
actually already got that message to Jeff Smullian on his desk.
You clip that out separately, right, Mark?
I'm not in tomorrow.
Send that up to the 7th floor. Major League Baseball, the Reds facing a Cathedral product tonight. Dylan Peters on the mound for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Reds are up a half game with the Padres losing last night. The Giants clinched a playoff berth by beating the Padres. First team to clinch a playoff berth at 94-50. So the wild card standings in the NL look like this. Reds up a half game. Padres a half game back. Cardinals a half game back after now they've won 5 straight. Phillies at 2.5. Mets at 3.5 back. Looking at the AL standings, Blue Jays are up a game for the first wild card spot. The second wildcard spot, it's the Yankees and Red Sox currently tied. Mariners 2 back. The A's 2.5 back.
I can't remember if the MLB still does, if you're tied for that second wildcard spot, if there is a playoff for that, or if is it still that? Okay.
Scotty's nodding his head.
So, yeah, right now they're ahead by win percentage, but that won't matter by the end of the year. If they're tied like this, you would
get
have
a home
another
game, I guess.
So there's that. New York plays Baltimore on the road the next 3 games. The Blue Jays, who are another wildcard contender, knew how to take care of business against bad teams. New York needs to do that against Baltimore these next 3.
We got trackside tonight. Laguna Seca is on the docket with 2 races left here for the IndyCar Series. Long Beach then to close out the year a week from Sunday. You guys had on Cole Hocker at one point, right? The track
we did
kid from
declared pro, didn't he?
In Oregon. Yeah, declared pro yesterday. Really cool video on Instagram signing with Nike for him. So
not a bad 2021 for him.
I was gonna say, literally these last 8 or 9 months. It hasn't been a great 2021 for a lot of people, but definitely for Cole Hocker. Indians, second to last homestand of the year for the Indianapolis Indians. They got St. Paul this week. Indy 11 home tonight. And the final week of the season for the Fever, which probably a good thing. 6-23 on the year. All right, we come back on the Fan Morning Show. Scotty J is foaming at the mouth for this pop quiz. He's ready to, I believe, Rick Venturi said that Darrell Taylor assaulted Braden Smith on Sunday on that 4th and 2. I believe that was the correct quote from Coach Venturi. I don't want to put words in Scotty's mouth, but I think that's what Scotty's attempting to do.
I need some Enter Sandman going. I mean, this is serious stuff today.
This is serious stuff. Give us a call, 317-239-1070. Test your luck at one of the hardest pop quizzes you're going to see.
Studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Fan Morning Show's Pop Quiz with Kevin Bowen. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
Scotty's over here looking like Peyton Manning sitting on the couch last night. I thought Peyton was going to jump through my screen a few times without into it. He was. One quick note to get to before The brutal pop quiz hits it after Tom goes perfect yesterday, 5 for 5. Edmund Sumner tweets out, again, tore his Achilles last week, I think it was. As much as I'm disappointed I won't be able to compete this year, I'm so excited to still watch the squad this year and being at games, feeling the amazing energy from fans. I know the guys are ready and locked in. Everyone has something to prove. I don't think the Pacers officially said that, but basically Edmund Sumner confirms, I think, what we all knew, that torn Achilles, he will miss the entire season. Very unfortunate, considering he was one of the lone bright spots last year. I don't think we'll find a bright spot today on the pop quiz, but I appreciate the effort that a caller is going to give. Jimmy Cook, number 1 through 7.
Number 2.
James.
Hey, how we doing, fellas?
Doing good, man. How are you feeling? This is I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is the 72 Dolphins looking at you in the face.
Yikes.
Are you ready?
As ready as I'm going to be.
James, question number 1. How many drivers named Smith have driven in the Indianapolis 500?
Seven.
Jimmy?
James, question number 2. How many drivers named Unser have driven in the Indianapolis 500?
3.
This is going about how I thought it'd go. Name the team that won the first World Series in 1903. A, the Pittsburgh Pirates. B, the New York Giants. C, the Boston Americans. D, the Philadelphia Athletics.
I guess I'm going to have to go with, Pittsburgh?
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Is that who you want to go with?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Question number 4. The Green Bay Packers defeated my Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 1. But if the Super Bowl had started 1 year earlier following the 1965 season instead of 1966, who would have played in the Super Bowl? So again, in 1966, who would have played in the Super Bowl? Sorry.
Was that
in 1965.
Cowboys,
My apologize. Go ahead. What was your guess?
Was that Cowboys, Packers?
Cowboys, Packers is what James is guessing. All right. Who won the first NBA championship in 1947? The Chicago Stags, the Baltimore Bullets, the Washington Capitals, or the Philadelphia Warriors?
Oh, man, this quiz is super tough, gentlemen.
James, it sucks. Again, I try to warn you, but again, appreciate the effort.
Oh, I knew I didn't have a shot in hell after the guy went 5 for 5 yesterday, but I'm going to go with D.
Oh, here we go.
You can put it on the board.
Let's go. You might, if the Colts would put a banner up for that one there. All right, James. Thank you for that. Number 1, how many drivers named Smith have driven the Indianapolis 500? Jimmy, Scotty warned us that this would be question number 1. James guessed 7.
Like I said, it's like jamming a batter inside with these IndyCar historical questions back to back.
First, Scotty, how many drivers have driven in the Indianapolis 500? He says about 800. James said 7 Smiths have been in the race.
Not a 1. He got him. He got him with a trick question.
You don't get to come back tomorrow. You don't even get a lousy copy of our home game. You're a complete loser.
You lose. Good day, sir.
Tony, get your bag and get the hell out.
Yeah, we've had a DeFerrin. I'm trying to think of these other kind of just.
I want them to die like dogs.
You know how they have those signs in like factories and warehouses? It's been how many days since it? All right, put it back up. It's 1.
I was
Put
going to
the
say,
1 on the board.
Scotty goes back to his office and just erases that. How many Unsers have driven in the 500? James guessed 3.
Need a times 2 there. 6 in total.
6. Jerry, Bobby, Al Sr., Al Jr., Johnny, and Robbie. Name the team that won the first World Series in 1903. He guessed the Pittsburgh Pirates. Have the Pirates won anything? Yeah, I guess they did have a couple good teams back in the day.
It's the only one of the list that still has their current name, but it was the Boston Americans, now the Boston Red Sox, who defeated Pittsburgh 5-3.
Well, the Pirates still have their name.
No, but that's what I mean. His guess was the only one because Boston Americans isn't what they are anymore.
Yeah, they beat Pittsburgh, so he was close.
Yep.
5-3. He guessed Cowboys Packers if the Super Bowl had started 1 year earlier.
Get your damn act together.
Jerry and Peyton there. By the way, Brett Favre next week, you think, on the telecast?
That'd be fun.
What the hell is Brett Favre doing here?
It was Packers Bills.
That's how our friend Greg Doyel would feel about Brett Favre being on the telecast.
But James rounds it out with the first NBA championship in 1947. The Philadelphia Warriors, correct, beat the Chicago Stags 4-1.
He was not shut out. Let it be known.
Not shut out. Was not going to be denied there. Scotty points out Donald Davidson's favorite piece of Indy 500 trivia, I believe, is the old Smith question there. Thank you, James, for calling in. Scotty back on a solid ground after that. We come back on the Fan Morning Show, get back into our Peyton and Eli conversation from earlier, kind of give our thoughts on maybe what we want to see moving forward with that Monday night telecast. He's Jimmy Cook. I'm Kevin Bowen. You're listening to the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Hi, we're OfferPad, the new way homes are sold. Go to OfferPad.com, tell us about your home, and we'll send you
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hoping to have Naeem Hines on the show tomorrow. That'll probably be early in the show, a little bit before 8 o'clock. Talk about his contract extension that he got late last week. Stephen Holder as well. And try to have Dave Revson on because, as we just heard with Gregg Doyel earlier in the hour, Jimmy, this is, I think, the last time there's been this sort of anticipation for both IU and Purdue in games. Same weekend.
Not in my lifetime, I don't think.
Oh, wow. Oh, geez, I don't know if I was going there. Yeah, I mean, when they're playing each other, but, like, I don't know. I guess.
But individually, to have big matchups like this, one's at home, one's on the road in the same weekend, like, I can't.
Yeah.
Where expectations were legitimate. Like, let's be real here. There's always some IU fans, or any fan base, not just IU, where you can talk yourself into a win. There are legitimate points, or at least there were prior to that Iowa game, that IU can very well win this game against Cincinnati. And that's just something that hasn't been the case in Purdue. There's a strong, you make a strong argument for an upset bid, particularly with the struggles the Irish have had on the offensive line and their quarterback drama, or not drama, but like their need to find mobility in one quarterback versus arm strength and poise in another.
No, I think now that I hear you out a little bit more, I'd probably jump the gun a bit. You know, it's definitely one of IU's biggest games, frankly, ever. And for Purdue, and a program that hasn't gotten to the level you thought Jeff Brom was going to get them to a few years ago, and the fact that Purdue and Notre Dame haven't played in a handful of years, yeah, I mean, it is probably one of the, if not the, of your lifetime.
And I know you could make the argument that this is a little bit like media cliche or whichever the case may be, but this is the last time that the Irish are going to play Purdue until 2024. So this is one of those rivalry games, like other than USC and I can't remember the other one right now. I don't know the stat in front of me anymore. But other than USC and Navy, Purdue is the third most played opponent on Notre Dame's entire schedule throughout their history. So this is a rivalry game. Battle for the Shillelagh, baby. Come on. Somebody's taking that for the next 3 years. It's a huge moment for Purdue as a program to take that, get bragging rights over the Irish until the annual series resumes here in a couple years.
You asked the 170 players on Purdue and Notre Dame
I know
combined.
They probably don't care. I know. They probably don't even know it's the Shillelagh Trophy.
Yeah.
I understand.
They're just like,
I know.
Do we get pizza?
I do,
and where's the party after the game? He's Jimmy Cook. I'm Kevin Bowen. Jimmy will be back with us tomorrow as well. We are going to hit on a little bit more of that Peyton and Eli stuff before we wrap things out. But Nick commented in the YouTube chat earlier. This goes back to a conversation we had. Colts lost to Jacksonville last year in the opener. Everyone panics. Colts lose to probably the division winner in Seattle. Everyone needs to take a deep breath. It's one game. I think, at least I'll speak for myself, Jimmy, and let you go. I still think the Colts are going to make the playoffs. I do. So I'm not in like full-on panic mode. I think what is concerning, though, is just this continues to shrink your margin for error when the schedule's much, much tougher this year. And these first 5 games are so difficult. And I'm a big believer in like game flow, season momentum, just psyche of players and those things. If you lose Sunday, now all of a sudden you go down to Tennessee a week from Sunday, and oh wow. I mean, that game is monumental to keeping this season on the right path.
I want you to answer me this before I go on. Are you in agreement with me that the toughest portion of the Colts schedule, though, is these first 5 games?
Oh, without a doubt.
It gets easier to an extent in terms of the way the schedule is constructed the rest of the way. Nowhere near the type of easiness that we had a year ago. My point being is that, and again, this isn't from the guy in the locker room. This is from the guy on the outside. From my perspective, I had the Colts losing on Sunday anyway. It's the way they lost that's a little bit concerning to me.
I think that's what has fans.
And that's what should have fans in a little bit of worrisome. But I do get that side of the argument from that comment or from that question. It is just one game. It was against a game that I didn't have them winning. I'm not surprised they lost, but if that's the type of inconsistency that you get from the defense and the offensive line throughout the season, then yeah, I'd be running around hitting the panic button left and right, calling for people's heads. Yeah,
I think it's a little bit of how they lost as well. Let's get to Max. Max, welcome to the Fan Morning Show.
Hey, Kevin, it's Music Mac. First time I called into the morning show.
Hey, what's up, Mac? Great to see you. Beers with Bowen.
Oh, yeah. Awesome night, man. I really had a great time. You were talking about the poor linebacker play. Do you think they underestimated the value of Anthony Walker Jr. letting him go?
Yeah, it's a very good question. First, I think Anthony Walker realized the writing on the wall, and he wanted to leave. Playing time is going to Bobby Okereke. Playing time is going to Darius Leonard. There's just not a room for a third linebacker, and Anthony Walker wants to be a full-time starter, so he moves on to Cleveland there. But I've tried to say several times this offseason of, Anthony Walker started the most games of any Colts defender over the last 3 years for a reason, because he brings kind of that dirty presence in the run game and handles things very well from a call standpoint and keeping everybody on the same page. And Julian Blackman talked about it yesterday. There are some communication issues still in the secondary, which if you're not going to be an exotic defense, you have to be good on communication. So I do think we probably underestimated a little bit of the Anthony Walker loss. Again, it's a two-way street, and Walker wanting to come back here, but Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke both have to take on more of a mindset of sometimes you just got to absorb blocks, blow up a block, and do some of the dirty work. Sometimes in that third and short situation, you've got to fill a hole and make a big-time tackle. It might not be the splash play of a Leonard fumble, but I do think you're going to see teams challenge the Colts in that area.
I understand this is what you're saying, and nor is that what Music Mac is saying, but if Anthony Walker's departure is what leads to inconsistency on the defense throughout this season, then you have systematic issues that need to be severely looked at. If that is the kill blow to this, which I don't think it is, and that's not what you're saying, but I happy for him. It is something you have to adjust with, but that's maybe one of those things where it's one game, first game without him in real live contact, and I expect that to improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, it comes back to, again, how teams will challenge the Colts this year. I think they will challenge them, and yes, they're going to test some of the secondary for sure, but they also want to line up and see, if we get Buckner blocked, if we get Grover Stewart blocked, what happens when the second level comes here and Leonard and Okereke aren't playing in space? Because as soon as you get a blocker on those guys, they've proven their ability to shed blocks and make plays in the run game are not maybe to the level that you would like them to be at. So we talked a little bit earlier about the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning broadcast last night on ESPN2. For those that missed it, here's a snippet of, I believe Peyton explaining to Eli why you don't throw the ref the ball during a hurry-up situation? Both of them here, Peyton and Eli, talking about not throwing the ball to the ref during 2-minute drills.
What's the receiver doing? He's not handing the ball. You got to hand the ball to the ref right there, right? You got to hand it to him. You can't throw it to him. Don't throw it to the ref. They cannot catch. Hand it to the umpire. That's who spots the ball. You're right. Don't ever do that, right? They're gonna touch it. They're gonna kick it accidentally. The ref's got to move it. That's a bad mistake. Hand it to the umpire. The umpire spots the ball.
That's a maestro of the 2-minute drill, right? Knowing exactly what needs to be done from every microcosm of that process. Just give the ball to the umpire, hand it to him, make sure that they're able to get it set so you can get the clock stopped.
Just because Hockey Lee had all those muscles doesn't mean he could catch the ball.
Right, exactly. Yeah, how many times have you seen refs just, oh boy, oh gosh, he just kicked it again, and obviously the defense loves to lay on the offensive players for quite a while there. So I thought it was extremely well done. After a little bit of a rough start, I'd like to see the game on permanently, have Peyton and Eli still, in corners of the screen. But you got to have that game on because we're not getting a normal announcer covering up some of those areas of hey, if you missed a penalty here, if you missed something, you need to have the visual on. And that's really my only major nitpick. And the other thing was I don't think you need to have 4 guests every week. I think there's times you can only need to have really 2 guests with Peyton and Eli.
I don't disagree with that, and maybe they do shrink down the guests. But, again, I'm dragging a little bit today because I was so compelled by the game and their back and forth that I stayed up for the whole thing. Each guest brought something unique to the table. I never felt like there was ever a guest that did not belong there conversationally.
Did you feel like Peyton a little bit too chatty compared to Eli, or is that just Peyton needs to talk more and Eli wants to be a little bit more in the reserve role?
Maybe a little bit. I think that Peyton needs to be the star, though, at least in terms of just the way they've communicated throughout their careers. And
part of that's older brother.
Exactly, right? You expect that from the dynamic. But it takes a while to develop chemistry, even though they're brothers. It's unique. It's new. You're on the air. You got to get used to that. You can't be as candid as you would be if you weren't on national television. Still fun, though.
I know they don't want to do this, but I'm curious if they'll do a game in person together at all. You know, would that, you know, change the dynamic? Obviously, they love the appeal of one's in Denver, one's in New Jersey. So, but yeah, fun broadcast last night on ESPN2. Thank you to Mike Wells. Thank you to Gregg Doyel. Mark will have those podcasts up here within the hour. And thank you to Jimmy Cook as well. It'll be Jay Cook and I tomorrow. Hopefully have Naeem Hines, Stephen Holder, and Dave Revson. Appreciate everybody listening to the Fan Morning Show here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
The Colts will wave the white flag and